Okay, we should be live. Checking my microphone because we have not streamed on this PC in a while. It's been a while since I used this PC for streaming. We are back in control of the Ryzen 9 7950X PC for live streaming. So I'm back on this machine. Threadripper is probably not going to be used for streaming that much, even though I could. I think I'm going to use that computer for a lot of other things besides just live streaming. So, but good evening, everyone. I see RK is here, Matt is here, Gushan is here. Hey guys, how's it going? Hey software. Software, that's such a strange, it's an interesting name, Software Tools. So there's a lot of interesting things. There is one article that I wanted to kind of cover briefly here that's relatively new. So, repurposed PlayStation 5 APUs for crypto mining. This is really strange. Like, I don't know why people would do this. I don't know what I'd like to know is what is actually being mined using these. Actually, let me turn the gain down a little bit more. It says ASRock's mining solution out for grabs on eBay. So if these are custom ASIC cards, so it's really weird seeing ETC is taking off again. For those that are not familiar, ETC is Ethereum Classic. You wonder if that mining GPU like that can be used for gaming. Probably not. Well, I mean, it could. It doesn't have like ray tracing based hardware or anything. This is all compute. Mining is all about compute performance. So it doesn't have any of the hardware that's supposedly good at tessellation or geometry. So it's strange though. This is, hold on, let me see. They say repurposed PS5 APU for crypto mining. ASRock's mining solution out for grabs on eBay. AMD BC250 mining card was a true Frankenstein of a card. Not only does it feature one of the kind, man, who wrote this? Not only it features one of the kind Sony, they don't have an editor. Someone wrote this with messed up grammar. Not only does it feature one-of-a-kind Sony PlayStation 5 APU, it was designed for the least expected workloads for this APU. Crypto mining. So it wasn't designed for crypto. This is supposed to be PS5? The last 2 years have been crazy enough for some... So, remember guys, remember what I warned you. Remember what I said earlier this year. I said crypto comes in every two to 2.5 year waves. So it's been like this since 2014. So the naysayers who think that we're never going to deal with crypto anymore, boy, have I got news for you. There's already stuff brewing. There's already stuff brewing in the crypto market. If you don't pay attention to crypto, I mean, that's probably why you would assume that, oh, it's not going to become a thing anymore. Isn't that the same? It probably is. It's probably the same SoC. So, ASRock's system, which was listed for around $15,000 when it came out, featured 12 BC250 cards and in a full mining chassis. These cards are equipped with Ariel Oberon. Okay, Oberon is the PlayStation 5. The Oberon APU is the PlayStation 5, which combines Zen 2 and RDNA 2 graphics. These APU SoCs were used by PS5 gaming consoles. In this case, however, these are not fully functional chips, but the leftovers with partially disabled graphics, which were also used for the AMD 4700S desktop kit. So this is it. And this is like legitimate stuff because this, I mean, you could tell that doesn't look fake. BlackRock coming to stir the pot. Yeah, man. This, like, when I think about 2010 to 2020, it started off really good and got really bad. When I think of the year 2000 and the year 2009, or I guess from 2000 to 2010, it's that's kind of a strange decade too, right? Like that one went from starting off with the whole Y2K scare to stuff like September 11th, and then it had stuff, and it's not like September 11th didn't affect people outside of the U.S. September 11th, for those that are outside of the U.S., they were affected too, particularly if you're somebody who travels on airplanes a lot, because after September 11th, security, like, you had to take your shoes off anytime you want to get on an airplane, and the metal detectors and the x-ray full body scanners and all this stuff. So yeah, everybody was affected by that. So that decade, it's like, it started off bad because it had like all this scare about Y2K and all that stuff, the turn of the century. Then there was the September 11th thing. Then it actually kind of got a little bit better. But then there was the whole like crash of 2008, the real estate crash, and a lot of people went bankrupt, and the housing market in America, at the very least, and I guess to a lesser extent Canada. I don't know about outside of North America, like how everyone else was affected from 2008, but that decade was like bad, then okay, then bad, and then it kind of got a little bit better at the very end. 2010 to 2020 was like good, better, best, and then like the pandemic hit, and that's kind of where it just left. It's like 2020, it just kind of started off really bad. You know what I'm saying? So 2020 to 2030, we have all kinds of weird stuff. If you're someone who likes technology, if you're a tech enthusiast, I'm sorry for you, because like 2020 set the pattern for like scalpers buying up GPUs and gaming consoles. And then there was the whole pandemic, which is kind of a one of a kind, but it made hardware extremely expensive and hard to get because of supply chain shortages. So then we had the crypto wave on top of that. So now you fast forward to where we are today. Currently there's no crypto wave. There's no GPU shortage, but there kind of is a GPU shortage. Then there's the whole like thing with China and the 4090 and all the AI stuff. So now you have the AI boom, and that's going to make the really high-end GPUs hard to get. And when I say the really high-end GPUs, I'm not talking about 4070, 4080. Those are not high-end GPUs. I'm talking about the 4090, the 4090 Ti, which for those that don't follow my channel, the 4090 Ti does exist, but it's a professional-only card. It has not been released to the consumer market because Nvidia can make way more money selling it to the AI market and the professional market. So why would they dare even bring it to the consumer market? Although they may actually do it maybe in like 6 months or something. And then now we have the rumor of crypto starting to rear its ugly head again, which is expected to happen sometime in the second half of next year. So don't be surprised if crypto starts becoming popular again and the AI stuff is still kind of a thing. But honestly, the AI market, that's not something to be worried about unless you're somebody who likes really, really high-end graphics cards. If you're someone who only buys mid-range or upper mid-range, then you're not affected by AI, but you are affected by crypto, because when crypto goes big, it's the middle GPUs that get gobbled up. So the AI is causing a headache for those that like 4090 class cards. Well, when crypto comes back next year, it's kind of on target to show up again next year, all the 4070, 4080, 4070 Ti, 4060 Ti, that whole middle of the market is going to get gobbled up. Rest assured. And I guess if there's 12 gigabyte 4060s, those are going to get gobbled up real fast. So everybody who wants to buy a gaming card, they're going to be stuck having to settle for like 8 gigabyte 7600s and 4060s. Because that's the only thing that's going to be left behind. So, but it's interesting that these PlayStation 5 SoCs are being used for mining. The system was expected to deliver a hash rate of up to 610 megahash in both ETH and ETC, thanks to its configuration. I don't understand what the deal is with Ethereum, though, because as far as I'm concerned, Ethereum is proof of stake, so why would you need to mine it? I don't understand why ET hash is in here, but ETC is still proof of work. So if they're trying to revive proof of work crypto, which is AKA, for those that don't know what that means, GPU mining crypto, then ETC is the way. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to have somebody invent a new coin, get enough buy-in from people and developers to actually quote-unquote see value in it, and have that take off, get people mining that and finding it profitable because they can convert it back into their local fiat currency or shuffle it into something else like Ethereum and get into proof of stake that way. Then you do have the return of crypto at that point. However, crypto economic landscape has changed significantly since its introduction last year, initially offering a profit of around $2 per day for each GPU. The current scenario paints a different picture, with profits dropping to just 2 cents or 20 cents per day. As a result, the system has become financially impractical for usage. Yeah, that's because Ethereum is, like I said, proof of stake. So the only way that this can become a problem is if proof of work comes back. And I don't see that happening with ETC unless somehow ETC... The problem with ETC is it's a has-been. You know, like there was a point in its history where it could have taken off, but it failed to gain traction. It failed to compete directly with Ethereum, and it just kind of fell by the wayside. So the only other ones that I can see taking its place would be something like Solana, or which I don't even know if Solana is even proof of work. I assume it is, but I haven't really paid attention to Solana. But the reason why I know about Solana is because if you look up like NFTs, Solana was one of the ones that all the NFT people were hyping up. So that could be one that could become very popular if it moves back to a proof of work model. So, which would make GPU mining ludicrous or lucrative again. The eBay offer shows... Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so basically, this is an interesting article. I don't know. Like this proves to me that we aren't really in any hardware shortage anymore, because we just aren't. Like the fact that somebody is repurposing PlayStation 5 Oberon processors, that means that the PlayStation 5 is not in any kind of shortage anymore. So we're way outside any sort of supply shortage. So interesting article though, nonetheless. Okay, let's see what else was on the list of things to talk about on this stream. I can't even remember what was it. We had... we'll talk about Zen 5 and Meteor Lake in a little bit. The main thing that I wanted to spend time on this stream doing was to go over the hardware predictions for next year. So, I guess, just looking at this, the AI war of the words, not the worlds, the words. Intel CEO says Nvidia's success came from pure luck. What? Nvidia says... I have a feeling someone's taking this out of context to make Intel look bad. Nvidia says it came from vision and execution, which Intel lacked. Oh man, I don't know. Wow, this is a really interesting article. Intel believes it would have been in a much more dominant position if they could develop the Larrabee project, halted a decade ago. Nvidia replies that Intel lacked vision and execution. Wait a minute, do they actually fight each other on this? Hold on. Jensen worked super hard at owning throughput computing, primarily for graphics initially, and then got extraordinarily lucky. They didn't even want to support their first AI project. This was Pat Gelsinger's words at MIT. So then somebody posted something on Twitter. I call it Twitter. I don't. The renaming of it to X is just stupid. That's like the dumbest sounding website ever. Like X. Like what is that? Like it's an X. You know, I don't know. There's like a negative connotation with that. All right. I worked at Intel on Larrabee applications in 2007. Then I went to Nvidia to work on ML in 2008. So I was there at both places at the time, and I can say Nvidia's dominance didn't come from luck. It came from vision and execution, which Intel lacked. Hold on a second. Wait a minute. Some former Intel / Nvidia employee said that, not whoever. Elon's first failed business was named X. Huh? Okay, why did he rename Twitter X then? Does he want Twitter to fail? Smells like Intel jealousy. This definitely sounds like Pat Gelsinger. Wait, what? This? Or the thing lacking vision? Or okay, the interesting part here is that apparently Intel CEO believes that if the company had continued its Larrabee, which was ongoing until Gelsinger left the company and then later returned 11 years ago, it was a project initiated by Intel to develop a highly parallel multi-core architecture. Was this supposed to be like Intel's attempt at clustered multi-threading? Is this basically like trying to build Bulldozer, but use it for a different use case, not general computing? I'm not familiar with Project Larrabee. Intel CEO laments that Nvidia's extraordinarily lucky AI dominance, claims it coulda, woulda, shoulda have been it. It's not hard to imagine why Intel's not the dominant player in AI. All you have to do is look at the CPU landscape from the year 2012 all the way to like basically when Zen, well, I won't say exactly when Zen came out, but like more like from 2012 to 2020, I guess. Somewhere around there. Because like the whole time AMD was floundering and running out of money, bleeding cash, and potentially could have gone bankrupt back in 2019. That whole decade, like 2010 to 2020, when Intel had dominance in the CPU market, did they take advantage of that? Did they leverage that to their fullest? No, they didn't. And that is the reason why it's pretty obvious that they were never going to be the dominant player in AI. You know, like that. It's the story of the tortoise and the hare. The tortoise and the hare. AMD was the tortoise, Intel was the hare. Intel was so fast. Intel had Sandy Bridge, Intel had Ivy Bridge, Intel had Haswell and Skylake and Coffee Lake. But what happened? What was it? It was quad-core i7. Quad-core with hyperthreading i7. Quad-core with hyperthreading i7 and quad-core with hyperthreading i7. That's basically what it was. From Sandy Bridge, Ivy Bridge, Haswell, Broadwell, Skylake. You know, you had at least 5 different CPU launches that were exactly the same thing for what, 5-6 years? So it's like, yeah, obviously they're not going to be the leaders in AI, right? They're maintaining the status quo over and over and over again because they don't have any competition. Meanwhile, you go look at what happened in the GPU market throughout that exact same time period. You had Nvidia with introducing a new architecture it is pretty much like every other generation, right? Like they had the big new generation, like let's say Fermi. Then they had the attempt for energy efficiency with Kepler. So that was a new architecture from Fermi. But then they made it better with Maxwell. Then they did Maxwell on steroids, which was a refined Maxwell, which was Pascal. That's a 10 series. That's a 1080 Ti, for those that don't know what I'm talking about. Then they had ray tracing with RTX 20 series. So they kept trying to innovate and change the nature of the game, because what do you do when you're ahead of the curve? You can either maintain the status quo, like i7, Skylake i7, Sandy Bridge i7, Ivy Bridge i7, etc., Haswell, Broadwell, etc. Or you can try to change it up. You can do you can bring in like RTX. You can bring in like ray tracing. You can rebrand stuff, but you add things to it, right? You actually do something new, right? Regardless of what your competitor's doing. Now, it's not that you don't disregard your competition. You always want to be aware of what your competitor's doing, because the last thing you want to have happen is you get blindsided because your competitor invented some novel thing that is just like way better than anything you thought of, like you don't want that to happen. But yeah, this is kind of, I don't know, man. The more these articles, they do make Intel look bad. Because you guys remember, like, what was it, like last week or 2 weeks ago? There was the whole, what was that thing? Intel had an internal company memo about saying AMD was rebranding stuff, but in the mobile market or so, or they're like rebranding Zen 2, Zen 3, Zen 4, or Zen 2 and Zen 3 or something like that. It's like, okay, what exactly was the thing about Skylake and Skylake being the same thing for 5 generations? Shari subscribed to the channel. Thanks for the sub. It was 14 nanometer plus refresh for years with little innovation from Intel. Yeah, right? Like, I mean, I've covered this on multiple streams. We've talked about Intel a lot when it comes to the timeline. Like, we don't talk too much about Intel when it comes to, like, the new technology, because there's not a whole lot to talk about there. But when it comes to looking at the past and understanding trends in the market, Intel is a very good case study on what not to do. Or what to do if you want to allow your competitor to catch up with you. Because they did, like, what? 2 victory laps on AMD, or 3 victory laps on AMD before AMD came out with Zen. Like, we could just draw the timeline out. But anyway, I don't want to do that, because we don't need to do that again. I've done that multiple times on stream before. The point is, did Nvidia get lucky? No, they did not get lucky. They did not get lucky at all. They made a big bet a decade ago on AI. Like this dude who literally joined Nvidia in 2008 to work on machine learning. That's news to me, because I wasn't aware that machine learning was even a thing in 2008. I came to be aware of machine learning in like 10 years ago. Or yeah, about 2013 is when I first heard about it. So this guy was starting that at Nvidia 5 years prior to me even knowing about it. That's 15 years ago. So to me, that's pretty crazy. That says a lot. That says that Nvidia invested very, very early on in machine learning before anybody else thought that it would get to where it is today. So that is vision. That is vision and execution. That is not luck. The only thing that justifies using the word luck is the fact that Nvidia bet on ML. They bet on it early, and they ended up being right. So in that regard, I'll give Pat Gelsinger the benefit of the doubt saying that Nvidia got lucky because they bet on ML and they ended up winning that bet. So in that regard, you can kind of say they got lucky, because if it didn't work out for them, then no one would be talking about this. So, least of all Intel. So anyway, that's an interesting story, though. It's like shots fired at Nvidia, but it's like they're just gonna ricochet off the wall. Not really gonna go anywhere. Okay, moving on. AMD Ryzen 8000G, AM5, Ryzen 5000X3D, and Ryzen 5000 AM4 desktop CPUs. Preliminary prices revealed: 8700G for $340, 5700X3D for... I'm very surprised that there is going to be a 5700X3D. This, to me, is very surprising that Zen 3 is still going strong after literally being a 3-year-old product at this time. Zen 3 came out in 2020, for those that have forgotten. It was fall 2020. That is 3 years ago. So that is crazy. When you think about technology and how refresh cycles work and how next-gen launches work, the fact that they're still cranking out new SKUs for AM4. Now, granted, it's still the same old architecture, but man, that's kind of... It's hard for me to understand why they're doing that. The only reason why I can think of a reason why AMD is still bringing out Zen 3 based silicon is either because they can diversify their TSMC node capacity this way, so they can inject more products from a volume standpoint into the market, because that makes them more competitive with Intel. One of the reasons why Intel maintains their position and market share is not because they have a superior product. It's anything but the fact that they have a superior product. The only reason why Intel is able to maintain their market share in the consumer desktop market, and when I say desktop, I'm also referring to mobile, so laptops, is because Intel is able to volume flood the market with product, whereas AMD is kind of limited to their TSMC capacity. So by continuing to produce products on an older node, they can keep pace with Intel in terms of the amount of volume of CPUs they can get out in the market. So if you have X amount of AM5 CPUs, you can have Y amount of AM4 CPUs. And the sum of both of them could be more similar to the sum of Intel's 13th and 14th gen products, because Intel still manufactures 13th gen. They have not EOL'd 13th gen at all. That's still heavily in mobile. And then they're now releasing Meteor Lake. So Intel's got Meteor Lake in mobile coming out next year. They have obviously the desktop 13th gen. They have 14th gen desktop. They have Meteor Lake for mobile, which is basically 14th gen for mobile. And then there's also 12th gen. They're still manufacturing tons and tons of Alder Lake, primarily for the enterprise, because their Xeons are all Alder Lake based. So that's the reason why, or it's similar to it. It's similar to Golden Cove. So in order for AMD to maintain, I guess, volume parity with Intel, because the reality is AMD is still not able to compete with Intel in terms of volume. Intel just manufactures way more chips. They're able to do it by keeping these older nodes alive. At least I think that's part of the strategy. The other reason why they're probably keeping AM4 CPUs around is because this is their only DDR4 option. And Intel, I remember Tech Potato made a very, I guess, poor, let's say a poor prediction or poor. He basically said, and this isn't to like call him out or anything, but I remember him telling the press that he didn't understand why Intel did DDR4 backwards compatibility for Alder Lake. Like he said that Intel should have just gone all in on DDR5. Well, now he's definitely eating those words because the fact that Intel maintained backwards compatibility with DDR4 for 12th gen, 13th gen, and well, 14 is basically 13th again. But the fact that it has backwards compatibility, that is huge because that means that somebody who wants to upgrade to this platform, they don't have to get DDR5 if they don't want to. And they can avoid the teething issues of memory training and having to buy a new motherboard for that. Now, granted, they would have to buy a new motherboard anyway if they were going to go to 12, 13, or 14. So it's still it was still a very good idea to maintain DDR4 compatibility for this generation of CPUs. Because if you look at the weird spot that AMD put themselves in when they launched Zen 4 last year, going DDR5 exclusive made it a lot harder for people to justify the upgrade because it made the upgrade harder for a lot of people. Because it meant not only did you have to buy a new motherboard, you had to buy more memory. And DDR5 a year ago was still very expensive. So it doesn't make sense for new CPUs that come out next year to require DDR4 compatibility. So I think we are now far enough along in DDR5's lifespan that DDR5 can be the exclusive memory for all these new CPUs. So Zen 5 obviously is going to be DDR5, and then Intel's Meteor Lake is going to be DDR5 exclusive. So there's no more DDR4 platforms that are going to be new, at least not for the consumer market. So, yeah. But I do think a year from now, Zen 3 based CPUs will definitely start winding down. Ryzen 5000 has had an amazing run. Like, I don't think there's been another CPU lineup that has had as long of a lifespan as this CPU line. And it's primarily because of X3D. X3D definitely extended the lifespan of Zen 3 based CPUs dramatically. So it does offer those that are still on Zen 2 or Zen 1 or on any AM4 motherboard, it does offer them an additional upgrade option for cheap. $260 retail to $330 retail. I don't know where they're getting these. These are preliminary numbers for that 5700 X3D. Oh, but I almost completely forgot. The Zen 4 APU. Is this Zen 4 APU? Or Zen 4 Plus? The 8000 series? I'm not sure how Ryzen 8000 is different from Ryzen 7000. My assumption is it is like a Zen 4 Plus. It's not Zen 5, but it's not exactly the same as Zen 4, like pure Zen 4. Did you make any progress? Yeah, I'm way further along in Hogwarts Legacy now. Let's see, what other things are on here before we talk about hardware predictions for next year. Let's see, video cards. Why is this doing that? Why is it checking if it's like, okay, anyway. Nvidia GeForce RTX Super review and sales embargo information leaks out. January will be busy with Nvidia RTX launches, RTX Super launches. Nvidia has 7 different embargoes set. Oh wow! Wait, where did this? Okay, here it is, everybody. This is it. So let me look at my calendar real quick. So January 8th is 2.5 weeks from now. Will be the RTX 4070, 4070 Ti, and 4080 Super announcement. Then they will also have RTX 4070 Super unboxing. RTX 4070 Super MSRP reviews will be January 16th. So that is 3.5 weeks from now. Then at the very end of January, toward the end of January, they'll have 4070 Super Ti or 4070 Ti Super, and then they'll have 4080 Super will be at the very end of January. Is this real? Oh, I guess it's real. That looks pretty real to me. I mean, unless somebody just made this whole thing up. AIC press and influencer reviews, MSRP only. AIC press and influencer reviews, non-MSRP only. What's the difference? Okay, so we can expect videos from the tech channels covering this stuff to show up on the 8th. The unboxing videos. Unboxing videos are going to be on the 8th. For all of them? I guess for all of them. Yeah, all of them are on the 8th. If you can't make progress on stream. Yeah, I could do that, or I could just play the game off stream. What this list doesn't say, however, is that there are other models planned, including RTX 4090D for China and RTX 3066 gigabyte. The former is also expected to hit the shelves in January, but it is okay. Wow, 3066 gigabyte. Oh, wow, that sounds so amazing. Yeah, that's worth talking about. Oh, man. Does this mean that the non-supers are going away? Why do they need to do this? Why are they introducing different SKUs? Like, I kind of get it because they probably have a bunch of defective dies from whatever the larger or the fully enabled edition of each of these chips would end up being. But I just think that this is just kind of stupid. Like, this to me is largely ignore all sort of thing. The only one that could be interesting is 4070 Super. The other two are kind of like 4080 Super is, I don't know, man. Like 4080 Super, the only way that could possibly make any sense is if it was the same, like, if they're going to do price hikes across the board on all of these, then this is a complete skip and ignore all. Like, just straight up. Like, if all of these are going to be like $100, $200 more expensive than what their non-supers are, then they're just a waste of everybody's time, in all honesty. Like, they're literally a waste of time to talk about. Like, for instance, if the 4070 Ti Super is, what, $900 or $1,000, nobody's going to care about it at all. If the 4080 Super is $1,400, it's going to be an ignore all. No one's going to care. Like, what? Why? You know what I'm saying? Like, the only way these could actually make sense is, at minimum, they have to maintain the exact same price of their non-super counterparts. Meaning the 4080 has to have a $1,200 MSRP. I mean, the 4080 Super has to have a $1,200 MSRP. 4070 Ti Super has to have an $800 MSRP. And the 4070 Super has to have a $600 MSRP. If they go above that, then they're a big waste of time. That sounds like re-releasing the 2060 all over again. Oh, the 3060 again? Yeah. There's too much Ampere. I mean, you can still buy 3060s brand new. Like, Yeah. It's, I don't know. Ampere and Zen 3 are still alive and well. I mean, when I say Ampere, I mean like, 3060 level Ampere. Yeah, that's okay. That'll be the only thing worth talking about around CES, actually. The, what is this? EPYC Turin CPUs have been pictured. Um, this is Zen 5 in the server market. So it's kind of crazy that this is already being talked about when we haven't really heard much about Zen 5 for consumer desktop. Which this is a good segue into one of the main topics for the stream, which is speculating for hardware releases for 2024. So, like PC World, they did their whole thing on their weekly live stream, talking about what they think is going to come out or not come out in 2024. And one of them made a very, very bad bet when they said that there'll be no GPUs or no new GPUs next year. Completely wrong. There will be new GPUs. Because you're going to be at that 24-month life cycle, they have to put something out because the shareholders demand it. So it is coming. Yeah, this is... Whoa. Whoa, that's a lot. That's a lot of cores. What is this? That's a lot. Zen 5C, that's like crazy. That is a cloud scale, web scale optimized product right there. All right. What else? The 7700 XT drops to $399 for the first time. This is what this should have been at launch. Like, in all honesty, 7700 XT should have always just been $399. Like, there was no reason for this to be at $449 because it put it too close to the 7800 XT. So it literally was eclipsed from day one by the 7800 XT. Because that is such an easy upsell. It's like this at $450 or the Big Brother for $50 more. So yeah, this definitely should have been, or it should be $399. Like, because this thing at $399 is, this is what, 12? This is a 12 gigabyte card. Yeah, this should be like $400. Because this would compete directly against 4060 Ti. 4060 Ti is also $400. So that's the way you win on value, is you price yourself at the same price of the competitor that has more mindshare, but you know that your product is superior. So yeah, because 4060 Ti is what, the 8 gigabyte thing that nobody wanted, if I remember correctly. So yeah, this is okay. So I guess now AMD commits this thing on AM5 for as long as possible. Yeah, we already know that. Gigabyte confirms its Intel 600 and AMD 600 will support the 256 gigabyte memory capacity. Okay, this is an interesting one. So, Gigabyte now confirms support for 64 gigabyte memory on all DDR5 compatible platforms. That's good. This is kind of expected though. This is natural progression. This is nothing. This to me is not big news. A lot of people seem to think this is big news, but it's not really. I mean, it's like, yeah. It just, they're doing what they did last year. Last year, or I guess this year, 2023, they came out with 24 gigabyte and 48 gigabyte DDR5. So you could go from like a 32 gigabyte or 2x16 to 2x24. Or, and I think that's single rank. Or, if you went dual rank, you could go from 2x32 to 2x48. So now, you'll be able to go to 2x64 Now, the only thing that I'm not aware of is the one for the DIMMs that are higher than 64. What is that? I'm not sure what those will be. But in any case, why this is good, this is only good news because it means that you can run higher memory while maintaining only 2 sticks of RAM. Because who cares if it can do, like, who cares if you can do, 256 gigabytes of RAM, because you're not going to be running the RAM very fast. I think the most you'll be able to get, I mean, if it's anything like 192 gigabytes or like 4x48 or 4x32, I'm going to guess that you're going to be able to run the RAM at, if you're lucky, anywhere from like 4400 to 4800 megahertz max. If you're on like 256 gigabytes of RAM. Check the RAM speeds. It's showing 4800 for 256 gig. Oh, well, okay. Yeah, that's exactly what I said. I said I'm guessing 4400 to 4800 was what I would guess. Is like the maximum speed you can get. So here, somebody is doing 4,256 4 sticks of RAM at 4,000 on an Intel Core i9 14900K. And obviously it's Gear 2 mode, looking at the screenshot, because Intel only does Gear 2 mode. And then on Ryzen, it looks like somebody managed to get 4800 in Gear 1 mode, that is actually pretty interesting, because you're doing Gear 1 at 4800. Yeah, that's okay. That's pretty good. This is 256 gigs. Yeah, that's about as fast as you could go, though. Like, you're not going to be able to go that fast. What I can tell you guys, so I always get a lot of comments on my YouTube videos that I did on RAM. I really need to do more video content around DDR5, because I get a lot of views for my DDR5 videos. When I go back and check my YouTube analytics, the videos that seem to get the most amount of views over a long period of time are all the videos I did for DDR5. In particular, the 192 gigabytes on AMD video that I did, the 128 gigabytes on AMD, and the 128 gigabytes on Intel. Those 3 videos get a lot of views for some weird reason. So I need to do more content on DDR5, because there's a lack of content. What that tells me is that there's a lack of content on the internet, or at least on YouTube, when it comes to DDR5. So I guess we're going to do more content on DDR5. Hanu, that's how you found me? You found me from the DDR5 videos? Yeah. So I got a lot of comments, and I want to address this now that I'm live. So oftentimes I get a lot of comments of people saying that they cannot get their XMP or their Expo profile to work as soon as they go from the most classic example is that they go from 64 gigabytes of RAM to 128 gigabytes of RAM. And that's why they find my video, because I have a video from February of this year. It's called 128 gigabytes of DDR5 on Ryzen. And yeah, in that video, I show that I can boot into Windows at 5200 megahertz with 128 gigabytes. But what I also show in that video, and people need to watch most of the video, not just the first 30 seconds of the first minute, because that doesn't show you what happens. If you actually watch the video, what ends up happening, like I think around the 60% through the video, I show that the computer blue screens while playing Forspoken. I use Forspoken to test the stability, and when I'm running 128 gigs on a 7950X, the computer will blue screen in Forspoken. So then what do? I back it down to 4800 and system's 100% stable. So I can do 120, I can do 4 sticks, 4800 megahertz gear 1 on my Zen 4 base platform. Like, no problem. Now, I did a similar video earlier, a few months ago, on this processor. Because a lot of people always talk about, oh, you can hit higher speeds on Intel. Oh, you can overclock your DDR to 7200. You can go up to 8000, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, that's all good if you only run like a puny 32 gigabytes of RAM, right? Like, but somebody like me, a power user who wants to use the machine and actually leverage the hardware to its fullest, 32 gigabytes of RAM, I would never build a system, like for myself personally, I would never build a system with just 32 gigabytes of RAM. So what I wanted to test was what happens when you do 4 sticks, 128 gigs on Intel 13900K. I wanted to see what would happen. So I put the exact same RAM that I know works at 4800 on here. I put it in here, and Intel claimed 5600. I clock it to 5600. It can get into Windows at 5600, but it is not stable. It'll blue screen. You'll get weird application crashes. You'll get silent errors that can technically corrupt your operating system, which actually what happened to me. So my OS got corrupted because Intel doesn't blue screen as fast as AMD. So it creates a false sense of security where you think it's working, but it's actually not. And your performance is actually worse. So eventually I have to reinstall Windows. But what I did was I backed this down to 4800 megahertz. And lo and behold, it's 100% stable. So basically the bottom line is, if regardless of whether you're on Intel 13, 14, or on Zen 4, I mean Zen 5 is coming out next year, but Zen 4, regardless of which CPU brand you're using, if you're on DDR5 and you want to run 128 gigabytes or 192 gigabytes of RAM, aka 4 sticks of dual rank in a 2 DPC configuration, the easiest way to get the RAM to just work is to load XMP or Expo and manually set your multiplier to 48. Run it at 4800 and it works. That is kind of the limit. Like you can probably push to 50 to 5000 or maybe 5200, but you're going to have to do a lot of voltage tweaks. You're going to have to raise VSOC on AMD to 1.3. You're going to have to raise Intel's the VCCSA up to I don't know what you need to raise it up to, but it has to go up. So it's going to run hotter. And I don't think it's worth it, to be honest. So I just set it to 4800 and that's it. Accept the reality. Run it at 4800 if you want 4 sticks of RAM. So bottom line is any sort of speed advantage that Intel has in terms of being able to clock higher, or AMD has in terms of being able to do Gear 1, because Intel can't do Gear 1 at all on DDR5, they become equal once you go to 4 sticks. Neither one has a speed advantage. Having said all of that, AMD is able to do Gear 1 with 4 sticks of RAM. So, I mean, it helps, but, it's still better to run both platforms at 2 sticks. Or at least do a 1 DPC configuration, and that is where this article makes sense, because you want to go with the highest density per DIMM, not the highest density across 4 sticks. That's not the way to do it. Forever stuck on 96. Yeah, you and me both. You and me both, because that's what I'm running. I'm running 96 gigabytes at 6400 right now. So, yeah. This is nothing more than a continuation of the non-binary like 48 DIMMs, 48 gig DIMMs, and 24 gig DIMMs. That's basically what this is. This is just more capacity per DIMM. 96 gigs of RAM, I would never even use half of that on my current gaming PC. Yeah, so the other thing too is you guys have to remember, like, Matt brings up a good point. If you're building a gaming PC, this is a big waste of money. Like 256 gigs of RAM or 100 or even 128, like that's not really necessary for gaming. So that's why 2 sticks as fast as you can get it to run. And if you want to like mess with subtimings like TRFI on the AMD stuff, go ahead and do that, and that's how you tune it. But like if you're someone who actually needs the RAM because you actually do stuff with the machine that's not just gaming, then this makes sense. But you have to accept the reality that you're not going to be running your RAM at some insane speed that's way outside of the JDEC, because that's just not how it works. Hey Michael, made it easy for you. You can use either 4 DIMMs of RAM, which are single-sided, or 2 DIMMs of RAM, which are double-sided at full expo. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I said in my video that I did a few months ago. 48 gigabytes would say more than enough. Yeah. We talked about that on the last live stream. I showed everybody that was watching at the time, like if you want like Hynix A die that can clock up to 8,000 on both AMD or Intel, it's a 48 gig DIMM configuration. That's what I would recommend. Or it's a 2x24, I should say. 48 gigabyte capacity. That is what I personally would get if I was going to build a PC that is literally just for gaming and for high frame rate. Like, that's literally what I would do. I would get that 1G skill kit with Hynix A die, 1.35 volts, clock it all the way up to 8,000 because that's its XMP profile. If I'm on Intel, you just set it and forget it. If you're on AMD, you set it and then you set gear 2, or you do uclock equals memclock divided by 2 in the BIOS, and then you load the XMP and it'll work. And I mean, I was supposed to get that RAM, but I never got the RAM, and Micro Center never had it. And then I was like, forget about this. I'm going to build Threadripper. So that's why I never made that video. But yeah, like typically 48 is nice because it's not 32. And I have already ran into a lot of situations earlier this year where I can see my system RAM get very, very close to 32 while playing a game like Hogwarts Legacy. So, I don't know. I kind of think 32 is kind of the minimum. 48 is what I would recommend. And 64 is actually just straight up better. But 64 is dual rank. So until we get single rank 64, which I believe these DIMMs are supposed to include 64 gigabyte single rank. They don't go into that detail. But I would assume 64 gigabytes will become a single rank configuration for DDR5 at some point. Then that will be what I would recommend over the 48 gig capacity. I'll let you borrow my 8,000 if you want to make a video. Oh, okay. I mean, I might actually take you up on that offer, RK. I didn't know you had that kit of RAM. I thought you had like a 70... I thought you had like a 7200 or a 7400. Or you had like a 7,000 something megahertz that you overclocked to 8,000. You see, I'm looking for like the 8,000 kit. The one that actually is rated to do 8,000. That way I can eliminate the RAM binning from the equation. And just focus only on the motherboard and the memory controller as the only limiting factors. See, because if I'm going to do a video about RAM, I want RAM that I can guarantee it's rated to go to 8,000. I'm not going to do the Buildzoid thing, because you know Buildzoid, he'll like buy a kit of RAM that's like Hynix M die or A die or something, but it's rated for some lower speed, like 7200 or 6800. Then he'll overclock it to 8,000. It's like, I'm not about that. I'm not going to waste my time trying to train, and change. No. I'm going to press a button. It's going to load XMP, and I'm going to adjust maybe VSOC, and we're off to the races. And that's it. And then I make the video, and that's how it goes. We're not going to waste our time spending hours trying to figure out how to like get the DDR5 to train and do all this. And if we're on Intel, we got to do the VCCSA mods. And all. No, I'm not going to waste my time doing that. So if it's rated for 8,000 at 1.35, then yes. You've got that G-Skill kit? Okay. Okay, now we're talking. Yeah, that's the good stuff. Yeah, because I get a lot of comments on my videos about DDR5, and the most common question is, or like it's somebody complaining that they feel sad because they can't run their RAM at the rated XMP speed when they're running 128 gigabytes of RAM. And it's like, that's just not how it works. That's like an unrealistic expectation, but people don't really understand the limitations of the technology. So maybe someday 128 gigabytes on an AM5 motherboard or an Intel motherboard will actually work at high speed or at the rated speed for that kit. But, you know, that's, I don't know. We're going to have to go through a couple generations of memory controllers before we can actually get there. Oh, that data was from Gigabyte. Shadow was saying that was from Gigabyte. Yeah, this is the B650 Aorus Elite. And this one was the... What was this? This was the Z790 Aorus Master. Okay. I actually have this motherboard. This is the Intel motherboard that I'm using. Yeah, this is my Intel motherboard. The one that's pictured here, the Aorus Master... That's the Z790 Aorus Master. I have the Z790 Aorus Master and the X670E Aorus Master. Apparently the Intel Gigabyte boards can do 6,000 4x64. Not much, but interesting to see. SK Hynix 4x64. So, okay. The thing is that 64 gig DIMM, is that a single rank DIMM? If so, it probably is, because it probably can do 6,000 because it's single rank. And that goes back to what I was saying about 5 to 10 minutes ago, where the only way you're going to be able to hit these higher speeds with 4 sticks is if they're single rank. Because you're not going to be hitting high speeds with dual rank when you populate all 4 sticks or all 4 slots. Took DDR4 at least 3 generations before you could run 2 DPC at the same speed as 1 DPC. You could either do 8,000 in Gear 2 with relatively crappy timings, or overclock 6,000 to 64 with tight timings in Gear 1. Whoever said you can hit 6,000 on yeah, Papa's gonna have to provide an actual source for that. But I'm assuming that if it's a single rank, if it's one of these, if it's one of these new DIMMs that you can't actually buy right now, for example, if it's a 64 gigabyte single rank DIMM, then you can probably run 4 of them at the rated speed. But it's not guaranteed, and you're probably going to have to mess with voltages and on-die bus terminations and on-die terminations and Procto DT and all that stuff. And the impedance strengths. You're going to have to mess with all that stuff if you're going to try to do that. Both MSI and Gigabyte used the Kingston Fury 64 gig. They are not single rank. Well, okay, if they're not single rank, if you put 4 sticks, they're not going to do 6,000. The bottom of that article says, worth noting that in both cases, the memory features... Yeah, that doesn't mean that they run at that speed. It means that the RAM is rated to do that speed. But look, we're talking about right here. Where is it? Okay, the company has showcased both Intel's Z790 and AMD's B650 boards offering such support for this new type of memory. Worth noting that in both cases, the memory featured 6,000 megahertz speed. So the memory, okay, this you're not reading this correctly. This means that the RAM is rated for 6,000. You know what that means? That means with 2 sticks, you can do 6,000. That doesn't mean you can do 6,000 with 4 sticks. There are 6,000 kits, but only 2 DIMMs. Yes. Yeah, no. Yeah. No, that's... Yeah, no, but it's good that we clear that up, because I don't want people to get confused, because this is what happens. This is why I get all these comments on my videos where they're asking how to do, like, 6,000 when they buy a second kit. You know, like, a common comment that I always get is, I was running what was it, 64 gigs on 2 sticks, and then I recently purchased a second kit, the same exact kit, but now when I have all 4 sticks installed, I can't run at 6,000 anymore. That is like an extremely common comment I've gotten that on my Intel video, I've gotten that on my Ryzen video, I've got that on my other Ryzen video, because I did like 192 gigabytes on Ryzen as well. So I've gotten that same comment on like 3 different videos from multiple different people. So it shows that there's a lack of understanding in terms of what is the official spec. They were clear when I looked at the article. Yeah, the screenshots, okay. Yeah. Well, I don't know why the Intel one's only able to do 4,000. I would have thought that they would both run the same. The AMD one's doing 4,800 in Gear 1, which is actually harder to do than 4,000 Gear 2. So I don't know. This might just be a bad bin 14900K. This 14900K might have a dud for an IMC if it's only doing like 4,000. Because my assumption here is that this is no different from 192 gigabytes of RAM. This is just more capacity per stick, but it's still 2 DPC. So it shouldn't be it's only marginally harder to do 256 than 192. If that makes sense. I mean, I have not personally tested 192 on Intel, but I can tell you guys that I can do 4,800 on 128 on both Intel and AMD. So, and I can do 4,800 on AMD at 192 gigabytes today. Like I have a video showing that. So, but my assumption is if I can do 4,800 Gear 1 AMD 192 gigs, I should be able to do the same exact RAM in the Intel, because the Intel's Gear 2. So it's like, what? I mean, it's not even supposed to be as hard, right? Like if I truly wanted Intel and AMD to be the same, I would always set AMD to be Gear 2 manually, regardless of what the speed of the RAM is, because I mean that's how you make it run the same as Intel, essentially. Like you want the same memory divider, right? The same ratio. So what about that Redditor who got 4 DIMMs? I need to find that article. If somebody can find that article for me, I want to go back and try to copy that guy's settings so I could possibly make a video on how to show you guys how to do 6,000 on 128 gigabytes. Now, the problem for me is I don't have 128 gigabytes that is rated for 6,400. So if I were to try to make that, if I was trying to mimic that overclock, or I guess I should say 6,000, I don't have 128 gigabytes rated for 6,000. So like right now, what I have is, where is Paint? So this is what I've got. I have 128 gigabytes, 4x, what is that, 32? of G.Skill 5600 megahertz. So I have this. That's what I have. So if I were to try to make a video showing how to overclock to 6000, I have to also, technically I'm overclocking the RAM because the RAM is not rated for 6000. It could probably run at 6000 with looser timings and or more voltage. But this is rated for 1.25 volts. This is Hynix M die, for those that are curious. This is what I made those videos with my 128 gigabyte on Intel and my 120 gigabyte on Ryzen. This is the RAM that I was using to make that video. Then I also have 192 gigabytes 4x48 of G.Skill 6400 megahertz at 1.35 volts. This is also Hynix M. So I've got this. So I guess I could use this and downclock it to 6000. But the problem is, then I'll be trying to hit 6000 on an even higher capacity. So it's like I could try to make that content, but I don't know how well it would go. But yeah, there is somebody on Reddit who managed to get 128 gigabytes. So someone on Reddit managed to get 128 gigabytes on Ryzen to work at 6000 megahertz. I really wish I bookmarked that thread because it was a very good thread. It like basically the way you do this is what is it called? Proc ODT. Proc ODT. It's been so long since I've messed with Proc ODT. You're adjusting the impedance values and the on-die bus terminations. You have to make these adjustments manually in the BIOS. This is the secret way to do it. This is the secret way to do it. And I wanted to make a video about it because I can pretty much guarantee you there's like no content on YouTube showing how to do this stuff. Like there's literally nothing. There might be some video from somebody somewhere for DDR4 for like Zen 1 back in like 5 years ago or something. Stable 128 Andy, that sounds familiar. Yeah, let me find that real quick. Let me find it. All right, I'm gonna search it in the browser here. Let me pull it up. Yeah, this is it. Okay, thanks. This is it. This is it. All right, we're going in. Here we go. This is it. This is it, guys. If you want to follow this thread, I bet RK is going to want to attempt this now. Because RK has all the best RAM to do this. Okay. Stable 128 gigabytes, 6000 CL30 on a Gisa 1007B. Greetings from Taiwan. Yeah, okay, yeah. The guy was from Taiwan. I remember this now. Yeah. He even replied to my video. He left a comment on my video, too. Like, when I first did that 192 gigabyte thing. Yeah. This is it. So, in here... Yeah, okay. Here's the setting. Here's the secret settings, guys. Here it is. This is it. See? Proc ODT, 48 ohms. Proc CADS, 30 ohms. So these were the settings. Simply applying Expo XMP did not work. The key was manually setting the following 9 memory bus on-die termination values. This is it. You have to change the impedance numbers to get it to actually work. So start manually set to 5400. That's crazy because that's already like really questionably stable. I don't know about 5400. I would probably start with 4800 because I know that will actually work. But I mean, okay, this guy went 54. Okay, that's already a high overclock. Those are not small values. These. Billdoid said he'll never try it because of the memory training time. It would be death. It's actually not that bad anymore. It does take a long time. Yeah, it does take a while. Like we're talking like 3 minutes. It's gonna take about 3 minutes. In my video, if you guys are curious to know how long it takes to train 4 sticks of 100 at 128 gig capacity or 192 gig capacity, you should check out that video that I did, because I kept the camera running the whole time. I did not cut any part of the memory training because I wanted to give viewers a realistic expectation if they were going to attempt the same thing. I want them to get an idea of how long the memory training will take, because it takes a long time, especially if you're someone who's coming from DDR4. It takes a long time to train for like a 2 DPC dual rank on Ryzen and Intel. Here's the thing. Everyone's like, oh, well, Intel's faster. No, it's not. Go watch my video with the 13900K trying to train 128 gigs of RAM. It is just as slow as Ryzen. Like, they're exactly the same. It was crazy to me. As soon as I go to 128 gigs on AMD or Intel, they literally behave the same. They literally behave the same. They're both horribly slow at memory training when you have 4 sticks of dual rank. So on 1007C, power down enable should be automatically enabled when enabling memory context restore. Okay, well, yeah, I think I'm on... What am I on right now? I am on... Let me check. What's my BIOS on this motherboard? Because if I was going to attempt this, I'd probably use this motherboard. I hate to use my stream PC for memory overclocking because... But I like this motherboard for memory overclocking because this motherboard has the postcode, the 7-segment debug. And it is very useful to have that because you know if you see code 15, you can sit there and you're not getting any sort of anxiety about is this going to post or not, because you know exactly what it's doing. Yeah, so I'm on... Okay, I don't like how Gigabyte doesn't say the actual version. Like that's kind of annoying. So let me see. I'm on F13. I'm actually on the F13D. So I'm on 1007C. For those wondering, like this is what I'm running. This, whatever this is. So this is what I currently am running on. I didn't go to F20. But yeah, so I'm on the one that has the patch for memory or geared power down enable. That looks like Samsung RAM. Can you provide the SKU? No, it's not. It's Hynix. You're talking about this? Or are you talking about what? Oh, it's somebody else's RAM? Carl P. No, that's Hynix. That's Hynix. You know why it's Hynix? No, Hynix can do 1.4. There's a lot of Hynix one. You know how you can tell? Look at the first number and the second number in his memory time. If it's CL32 and the number after it is something other than 32, then it's Hynix. That's Hynix M die. Yeah, so this... Wow, this is even running... I can't believe this is actually running stable in Gear 1. What's crazy about this is his U clock is running at 3.2 gigahertz. I wouldn't even attempt that. Like, if I was going to make a video showing 6,000 on 128 gigs, I'm going to go Gear 2. I am straight up going U clock equals M clock divided by 2. Like, I'm not even going to try to do Gear 1 because it's like, I mean, if it works, it works. But this guy went like, wait a minute, his U clock is, wait a minute, this is 64. Is this 64? Oh, never mind. Okay. While attempting 128 at 6400, uClock memclock system successfully booted. However, yeah. That's not going to be stable. This is not stable. They need to. All he has to do here is set this to gear 2. uClock equals memclock divided by 2, and then that'll work. And that's good. And like, if it was me, I would settle for that. I would sell. I mean, here's the thing: RK tested Gear 2 versus Gear 1 on AMD, and the reality was you actually don't lose that much performance running in Gear 2. Like because your U clock in Gear 2, your U clock is 1.6 gigahertz. So it's like, yeah, that's pretty slow. But when you think about it, 1.6 gigahertz is still relatively close to 2 gigahertz. It's 400 megahertz off. So in terms of like the fabric to the IMC, there's not much of a translation there. So your Gear 1, no, I'm running in Gear 2. I always run Gear 2. I always run Gear 2, guys. Because there's no, like, why do I need to be in Gear 1? Why do I need to be in Gear 1? I'm all about stability and uptime. Here, let me... Yeah, I'm definitely in Gear 2. I'm just checking right now in CPU-Z. Because sometimes Gigabyte will set it back to Gear 1. Yeah, no, it's Gear 2. I never run Gear 1. I never run Gear 1. My Threadripper is running in Gear 2 mode with 128 gigs at 6400. Especially for workstation, can't risk. Yes, I know. And the reason why there's too much emphasis on Gear 1. Here's the thing, guys. Let me let you in on a little secret. Intel does not run Gear 1 on DDR5 at all. At all. That means Intel is always running in Gear 2. So why can't AMD also just run in Gear 2? Who cares about Gear 1? Yes, it's a little bit better. You get better read, write, copy. You get a little bit better latency, but the reality is your latency is not that much worse when you go to Gear 2, when you're running at like 6400. So, and the system is way more stable. Okay, it's not that you can't be stable in Gear 1, but like as soon as you go above 3 gigahertz, because the problem is the IMC on Zen 4 cannot really handle going above 3 gigahertz. It's like, yeah, you can get it to do 3.1, but that's about the most you can go. And that's why they say 6200 is kind of like the highest you can go. But 3 gigahertz is kind of the limit on the IMC. So it's like, why even bother? Just run it in Gear 2 and clock it to like 1600 or maybe 1800, you know? Just run it like that. You're not even losing much at all. And you basically have parity with Intel when you run it in Gear 2, because that way, if you wanted to clock your RAM higher, you could. Like, you could do 8,000, is what I'm saying, if you wanted. But it's like, you don't really get much of a benefit. So it's like, it's a whole lot of expense because you have to buy, like, better bin RAM, etc., than just, 6,000 Gear 1. Can you provide the SKU? Oh, that. Okay. Especially for workstation. Yeah. Yeah, because, I mean, you guys have seen, like, I'll play all kinds of games on stream. I'll, like, fully load the system. And we're running 6400 megahertz Gear 2, 96 gigs, no crashes. I never crash. I never have any problems. I put the computer to sleep. I never cold start it. Like, if it's time to stream, we just wake the computer up. It wakes up in like 3 seconds. Go live, fire up again. So the RAM is never refreshed, is what I'm saying. My RAM on my PC, it's never like cold started. So it's like, it's always using the sleep S3 suspended RAM. So there's all kinds of stuff from like a week ago just sitting there in the RAM. and it's, you know, that's why I need a 96 gigs. But I don't want this Gear 1 stuff, because if it's not stable and you put it to sleep and wake it up and all this stuff, see, no, that's why I'm all about stability and reliability on the system. So it's like I want it to be in Gear 2 for that reason. Because I don't want the headache of having to try to troubleshoot, oh, why is Gear 1 not working? What do I need to adjust? Do I need to bring VSOC up? It's like, why even bother? Just leave it alone. Gear 2's good. You're covering RAM. Will you be covering GPU monitor and CPU news? Yes, we're going to talk about... So, we're going to talk about expectations for next year. Hardware releases coming out next year. Or predictions, I'll say. Like, my predictions and the chat's predictions for 2024. So, yeah, I guess... This is really cool what this guy was able to do. So, yeah, I'm definitely going to look into this. I might make a video about it. I'm going to have to figure out what RAM I'll actually use. I'll probably use 192 gigs. And I'll have to mess with the, this stuff. That stuff. This is what you need to do. So if anybody wants to try this, yeah, I may have to talk with Shadow, because it's like, I don't know what... So my thing with doing this, I don't know what's a safe value for, like, for example, proct ODT. The last time I ever touched proct ODT was on Zen 1. And that was to get Zen 1 to run stable with 4 sticks of DDR4 at 3200 megahertz. And remember, guys, that's Zen 1. Zen 1, getting Zen 1 to run 4 sticks at 3200 megahertz was not an easy thing to do. So, and that was the only time I ever messed with proct ODT. So it's been years since I messed with the impedance on-die termination values on any processor. So I may need to do some research on that before I attempt this. Because I don't know what's worse, higher impedance or lower. I always get them mixed up in terms of what happens with the CPU's IMC. We'll probably go for another hour. 2-piece. It's only resistance. What could possibly go wrong? Well, it's not like it's going to damage anything, but you'll get into a situation where you're going to have to clear CMOS, because your computer will just end up like... It'll end up like trying to memory train, or it just won't even memory train, and you'll see like 0D on the debug. That's the reason why having one of these little the little 8.8 thing is very useful when you're doing memory overclocking, because if you don't have one of these, you're literally sitting there in the dark hoping that the thing is going to train. The only indicator that it's training is a little red LED for the DRAM blinking periodically. But you know, if that's blinking for 5 minutes and it doesn't seem to be stopping, you don't know what's going on. Whereas if you have the debug LED, will show you. It'll say 15. If it says 15, then you know it's actually training. Now, if it's hanging at 0D or like C1 or 97 or 96, then you might have a problem. But see, if you don't have those codes, then how do you know? It's not going to tell you in any other way. So that's why having one of these little postcode debug things, particularly for memory, it comes in very useful. But yeah, that's an interesting article. That's a good find. When was this posted? How old was this? This was back when? 5 months ago. Yeah, this is a good one. Okay, so now we can talk about predictions for next year, since CES is coming soon. All right. Okay, so hardware predictions for 2024. All right, now we can say we're going to kind of guess at what's going to happen. Hynix doesn't sell that as a kit of 4 DIMMs. Yeah, you have to buy 2 separate ones. Yeah, and the other thing too that you could also do, Wendell from Level 1 Techs did say that you could do, so Wendell said that if you've got 4 DIMMs in the motherboard, you know, so you got your A1, your A2, your B1, your B2. If you have 4 sticks and you're going to populate all 4 slots on the motherboard, if you have 2 different kits, so you have one kit that you purchased originally when you first built the system, then you purchased a second kit later on. He talked about if you want to try to overclock the RAM, he recommends, so if this is what, A1 right there, and then you have A2, B1, B2 like this, he actually recommends that you put the matching kit on the same channel. So for example, in his example, he had Corsair, I think he had like a Corsair 5600 or something, or what. Let's say we have 2 different, okay, let's just say we've got a G-Skill 6000 kit, 2x32. And then let's say we have a, what's another brand? Team Group 6000 kit, 2x32. Now, when you first purchase, let's say you purchased the G-Skill first, and you got the Team Group. So that means that currently, let's say G-Skill is blue, Team Group is red. So when you first set up the system, you put G-Skill blue in A2 and B2. This is how you normally set up. Then you go buy a second kit of RAM. Let's say you bought a Team Group 6000 megahertz. So now we're going to do 128 gigs of RAM. So normally you would think, oh, I'm just going to install it in the 2 empty slots. It's just going to be like this. But what Wendell was saying is, rather than do that, you'd actually have an easier time getting it to work if you did this. If you instead put both matching RAM sticks on the same channel, in this case channel A, and then you go and you put the other kit of RAM on channel B. He claims that he had better luck with getting it to not only train faster, but to actually like run, not at the rated speed, because, you know, he wasn't doing like 6,000. He wasn't trying to overclock it. But he was able to get it to do like 4,800, kind of like what I was doing on mine, without too much trouble by doing this. The idea behind doing this, because at first it seems kind of like non-intuitive to do this, but when you think about it, it's actually better, because the RAM that's in a matching kit is technically it's identical. The ICs are been the same. They were manufactured around the same time. Obviously, it's going to be the same batch. So there's less likely for things to go wrong if they're in the same channel, because they're essentially acting like an extension of each other, because we're assuming a daisy chain topology, which means when the CPU, which is typically sitting over here, so this is the CPU. Let's say we have a 7800X 3D. So we're dealing with a 7800X 3D. It looks something like this. So you have your I/O die, and then you have your CCD one with the V cache on top of it. So let's just use this CPU as an example. It doesn't have to be this CPU, but it could be any CPU that uses DDR5. So when this thing, when the IMC, which is in here, wants to talk to the memory, the wire traces on the board, and this is the reason why the board actually does matter if you're trying to do like world record overclocking for RAM, or just overclocking in RAM in general. When it talks to the RAM, it's going to talk to A2 and B2. So it's going to like read through this. If we're doing a read operation or a write operation, doesn't really matter. It's going to snake its way through here, go into A1 from A2, go in here and do that, and then snake its way back out. Likewise, when it goes into the B channel, it's going to go in B2, and it's going to snake its way. It's going to snake its way through the top, or I guess through B1 via B2. That's how daisy chain topology works, and that's the reason why they tell you when you are using two sticks, you plug them in A2 and B2. You don't put them in A1 and B1, because if you put them in A1 and B1, when the CPU tries to talk to the RAM, it has to snake its way through a bunch of nothing just to get to your RAM stick that's sitting in A1, because you got nothing in A2. But the point is, if you have two sticks from the same kit, if you put them in the same channel, remember that channel talks to the CPU's memory controller over a wire. So you're reducing the complexity of that channel because you have the exact same RAM all the way through both DIMM slots. As opposed to if you had them mixed, if you had Team Group's RAM with G-Skill in a channel, now you have potentially slightly different, you have different rated bus termination numbers or something for that channel that one of those sticks of RAM might not like, because it's a different bin, it's a different SKU, different brand, right? Assuming it's all Hynix M die, you would think that it shouldn't be that big of a deal, but sometimes it does make a difference. Like especially if you had, say, Hynix M die, like let's say this is Hynix M die, but this Team Group one is Hynix A die, for instance. See, so now this RAM, these are different, what do they call it? These are different die binnings. So if you put a Team Group Hynix A die with an Hynix M die in A1, if I go and put this over here and I go and put this next to it in the same channel, there's going to be a little bit of a mismatch there, because the sometimes might be a little bit different depending on the fact that they're different binning. They're like M die versus A die. You know what I'm saying? So that's why if you're running 4 sticks and you don't have an actual 4 kit, like a 4-stick kit, you only have 2 different kits. You want those kits to be on their own channels to make it easier for the memory controller. The only YouTuber that has ever talked about that besides me is Wendell from Level 1 Techs. And he's a much larger channel than me, so I'm actually glad that he covered that, because no one has ever talked about this. Like, there's very little content on YouTube talking about 4 sticks of RAM. And it's kind of mind-boggling how little is known about it. Or people assume that, it doesn't work. Rurikon, I know he's not a hardware-focused channel, he's a gaming-focused channel, but Rurikon recently did a live PC build, and he tried to put 4 sticks. It was this. He built a brand new PC featuring the 7950X 3D with a 7900 XTX, and he was doing the PC build live, and he put 4 sticks of RAM in the machine. I was like, okay, it's gonna take him a while to train all that, and he thought something was wrong, but it worked. It came up, but he was like, wait, what? Did I do something wrong? Not knowing that DDR5 with 4 sticks takes a long time to train. And then he thought it wasn't stable because he couldn't do the XMP profile. Okay, anyway, I think that kind of answers the question on all the RAM stuff. So now we can do hardware predictions for 2024. So I guess what I expect to see is RTX 40 series Super. RTX 40 Super, I guess. This has been talked about many, many times in the tech press, so we pretty much know that's coming at this point. Maybe, possibly. Did you cover Moore's Law's latest Blackwell leak from earlier today? No, I didn't have time to watch that. I have not watched that at all. So, 40 series is coming this year. Or next year. The other thing that's coming next year is Zen 5. Zen 5 is coming next year. Meteor Lake, I think. Emerald? What? No, I think just say Meteor Lake for now. I forget all the names. And then we have RTX 50 series is coming. And then our RDNA 4 is supposed to come out. There's so many random things, people saying oh, it's mid-range only or all this stuff. I don't know about that, but these are the things. Oh, what else? PS5 Pro. Yeah, we can't forget about PS5 Pro. All right, so these are the rumored things that are coming out next year. And I'm going to give my predictions on when I think we can expect to see them. Because they're supposed to come out next year. If they don't, then that's not going to look good for whichever company is not able to launch those products. Because all of these products are sold by publicly traded companies, which means publicly traded companies have to deliver new product lineups because that's just kind of how the business cycle works for them. So typically when it comes to CPUs and GPUs, you get about a 24-month, anywhere from like 18 to 24 months. You usually have a year and a half to 2 years to bring out a new product. And historically, this has held true. Anybody who doesn't believe me when I say that we will see these products next year, I would encourage you to go look at when previous generation products launch, and then look at count the number of months between product releases, and then you'll understand why these products are coming next year. It's pretty easy. Like I said, I'm someone who does not use leaks and insider knowledge to make predictions for hardware. All I do is I simply look at the history. I look at what happened in the past, and I use that information to make an educated guess on when I can expect new products, and I have been able to predict with pretty high accuracy. I don't need to be someone like Moore's Law is dead. I don't need to be a leaker. I don't need to be anyone who has insider knowledge. All I can do is look at when the 6000 series launched for AMD. When did RTX 30 series come out? When did RTX 40 series come out? When did RTX 20 series come out? All I gotta do is look at every previous generation, and I can make a very good educated guess, which with high accuracy, I might add, on when these products come out. All in the row. Oops, Sony going through the ringer. Oh, you know what I forgot? Switch 2. I think the Switch 2 is coming out, although we haven't really... That's the only one that I don't really know. That's the one where I feel a little bit not too confident saying that. Moore's Law is Dead did have an insightful interview with an AI game dev relating to hardware specs. I might have to watch that. Wolverine leaked on PC. What? Sony going through the ringer. Technically this year, if you're going on fiscal calendar, did you cover... Okay. So when are these things coming out? Oh, it was last week ago. All right, let's do one thing though. This is... Let me put this over here. What we'll do what will help, I guess, provide some clarity is if we do the timeline. The famous thing that I'm mostly known for when it comes to my live streams, for people that have been watching me for a while, I like to make the timeline graph to show, or I guess the chart, to look at the history of when previous generation hardware comes out. Because by doing this, I think it makes it very easy to understand why we can guess without any sort of leaks. We can guess. We can simply make an educated guess, and we pretty much always get it right. All right, so let's put some years on here. Let's see. So this is 2024. You know what? Let's do 2025. Just put 2025 on here. 2024, 23, 22, 21, 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017, 2016, and 2015. Let's just go as far back as 2015. I don't think we need to go further back than that. So let's look at, what's the first on the list? RTX Super. Okay, Super is kind of dumb because that one we already kind of have seen so many articles about, so we're just going to ignore that. So let's look at Zen 5. We're just going to go down the list. Let's just simply go down the list. And we're going to focus on consumer desktop, not mobile. Mobile has a different timeline, but the same applies if you wanted to look at mobile releases. So consumer desktop, Zen 1, Zen Plus, Zen 2, Zen 3, Zen 4. You guys can see where this is going. Zen 5, 2024, guaranteed. Because the pattern emerges around Zen, well, if we discount Zen, if you ignore this one for a moment, you have to kind of look and see what happened here. Because here we have 2019 for Zen 2 and 2020 for Zen 3. Now what you have to do is you have to zoom in and look at when these products actually launched to see how far apart they were. So, Zen 2 was July 7th, 2019, was Zen 2. Now, Zen 3, that's the one I don't actually have memorized. Zen 3, I know it was somewhere around Q4 of 2020. That much I remember. I think it was like, I want to say Zen 3 launched in November, if I had to guess. Off the top of my head, my guess would be November. Okay, wait, Shadow said November 5th? Okay, so I got it right. So, but this one was July. So, how many months is that? Well, that's more than 12 months. That's almost a year and a half. So, it's like an 18-month gap between them. So, you can kind of see that as, oh, it's more than a year, or it's about a year and a half between these two. So, it's still kind of a 2-year cadence. If you look at Zen 1, this was March of 2017. This was like 3 of... I'm just going to put the month to make it easy, so I don't have these big numbers everywhere. So this one was March 2017. This, I believe, was April 2018, but I forget about Zen Plus. Zen 2 was definitely July of 2019. So you can see, if we go straight from Zen 1 to Zen 2, if we're talking about architecture change, that is more than 2 years apart for these two. So notice, just keep note of that. And then we had Zen 3, which was November of 2020. Zen 4 was the tail end of September of 2022. So now with this info, we can try to make a prediction on when Zen 5 is coming out without any sort of leaks, without any sort of insider information. We can try to make an educated guess or a window of when this processor will come out just by looking at all the previous releases. Some think AM6 will coincide with DDR6 launch. Doesn't mean Zen 5 won't be supported. You'd need to look at DDR6 in terms of like how far along that actually is. So let's look at this. So this is going to be, if it goes all the way to September of next year, that would be 2 years apart, which means that would be more like a Zen 1 to a Zen 2, which was greater than 2 years apart. Now, they actually had an intermediate launch of the Ryzen 2000 in here, so that's why I don't think it's going to be 2 years. If I had to guess, I would look more at like an 18-month cycle between Zen 3 and Zen 4. To me, 18 months is more realistic. So, if Zen 4 was September 22, we can kind of say that's about Q4 of last year. So let's see. 12 months would be, it's already been more than 12 months. So we add 6 from Q4. That would be what? Let me think about this. So we do 12 from October, November, December, January, February, March, April. So I'm going to guess that Zen 5 is going to be a Q2 24 launch. Just based off of looking at the history. Now, it could have been as early as March of next year. I don't really think it's going to be that early, the more I think about it, because I'd have to look at when Turin is coming out for the EPYC. But the point is, I think it's not unreasonable to guess Q2 of next year for Zen 5. So anywhere from April through June of next year. If it wants to be early, it would be March. But I think March would be the earliest for Zen 5 possible. And if it wants to be Q3, it could. It could very well be Q3 because this is a 2-year gap. This is almost a 2-year gap, actually. So hold on a second. I didn't really think of Zen 3 and Zen 4. So if you guys look at this, this is like a 22-month gap. So if AMD was going to do a similar gap, which they very well could, then they would have to make Zen 5 a Q3 launch. But I don't think it's unreasonable to predict a Q2 launch. Either Q2 or Q3 of next year for Zen 5. If it's going to be more like this, then we're looking at a Q3 launch. If it's going to be more like this, then we're looking at a Q2 launch, which falls in line with a final AM5 launch circa fall 2025. Yeah, that makes sense too, right? Because if you want to predict Zen 6, let's say it's Q2, so we'd do 18 months from Q2, that would be roughly Q4 of 25 for Zen 6. So yeah, that makes sense. So we could actually just keep that on the record as a prediction for Zen 6. So I'm going to leave that like that. Do you think AMD would do Q2 24 to beat Intel Meteor Lake? So Intel, yeah, we're going to talk about Meteor Lake next. We're about to talk about Meteor Lake. It doesn't really matter what Intel's doing. But we'll talk about Meteor Lake here in a little bit, because it's the next one on the list. So that's a great segue. So we covered this. We already know that's January. So that's checked off. Now Zen 5's checked off. Now we can talk about Meteor Lake. So let me just put these back here. Put this here. Why is that check there? Okay. Beat is the wrong word, more like beat them into submission. Well, I don't think it has anything to do with Intel. It has nothing to do with Intel. This has to do with the fact that AMD is a publicly traded company and they have to release new products every roughly 18, 24-month cycles, right? You can tell clearly by looking at this. So you don't even need to be looking at Intel to understand why these predictions that I'm making actually, there's logic behind these. I'm not just blind guessing. This is not a blind guess. This is like an industry analyst predicting when a product is going to launch based off of historical information. That's all I'm doing here. This is not blind guessing, guys. Like I'm not blind guessing. So anyway, now we're gonna talk about Meteor Lake. So Meteor Lake technically launched this month for some reason. I don't really know why, but it did. But it's laptop only. It's mobile market. Now, what will they do for the consumer desktop? Now, I don't think they're gonna call it Meteor Lake. They're gonna probably, what is it called? Emerald? No, that's Emerald Rapids is the server one. I forgot what it's called. Is it Lunar Lake? Man, I don't remember the code name. Anyway, the point is, I don't know what it's called, but it's like whatever the thing that's coming to consumer desktop, whatever that's supposed to be, whether that's Meteor Lake or Lunar Lake or something, coffee or some kind of lake or whatever, like whatever the new Intel thing is, it's coming out around Q3, Q4 of next year. Lunar Lake is the next. Okay, so it's Lunar Lake, not Meteor Lake. Okay, so we're gonna do like a thing here. Lunar Lake. This is the thing. The Lunar Lake. Meteor Lake. No. Well, no. Meteor Lake is the mobile product. So I'm trying to remember. Okay, we got to do Intel's timeline, guys. We got to do Intel's timeline. I don't know what the name is. The name is irrelevant at this point. We just need to figure out what Intel's launches are to make an educated guess as to when their product is coming out. Because I'm pretty sure AMD does this so they can try to figure out what their window is going to be, just to understand like if it's going to line up with their competitor or not. And likewise, Intel's probably like, oh, AMD's probably going to put something out in the middle of around the middle of next year-ish. You know, either Q2 or Q3. So it's like, when are we going to put our thing? But at the end of the day, it's based off of like the fact that they have to get something out the door because they are publicly traded companies. They have to have new products. They have to follow their roadmaps. Every one of these technology companies has an internal product roadmap that they follow. And they have a due date of when the thing needs to be ready to go to market. So there's none of this, oh, it's like, you know, it's going to show up here and there because because my competitor is doing this, I got to get something out here because they got this. No, they follow their roadmap that the product team, the product managers, all these different teams building this product up. It's a deadline. It's all planned out internally. And that's what we're trying to guess at. We're trying to guess at when that go-to-market window is going to occur. Now, for Intel, let's try to look at when did they... Intel launched, let's go as far back as 7th gen. Intel 7th gen. Let's do a different color so I don't confuse people. Let's do blue. Cabby, well, just do 7th gen. This is not going to confuse people with the names. Do you want me to do names? No, let's not do names. We'll do names. We'll do names because Intel had two, Cabby, and they also had Coffee in 2017. They had both. Cabby was like January 17. I think Coffee Lake was like August or something. I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing a number out there. It was either August or September. of 2017. So that was Intel's 7th and 8th gen. You know what? Let's just do this so that people understand it more easily, because people might not know what the names are. I know all the names, but not everybody in the chat knows the names. So, if anyone remembers 8700K, 8700K i7, the first 6-core i7 for consumer desktop, that was 2017. That was the 8th gen. That was a response to AMD's Zen, because this was before Zen and they were not ready. It was like Illidan from Burning Crusade. You are not prepared. They were not prepared for that. All right, then 2018. What did we get? The first i9, 9900K was 2018. 9th gen was around like September or something. I forget when exactly, but it was like around here. Then what happened in 2019? A big fat zero. Nothing. That was literally nothing. Wow, nothing. What happened in 2020, guys? 10th gen. Comet Lake was, I want to say it was like April or something. I'm just guessing at this point. People can fact check me, and I'm curious to know like how many of them are gonna get right. I'm just blind guessing. I know I have the year. I don't know if I have the month when it comes to Intel's launch for these. So you guys feel free to correct whatever one of these are wrong, but it'll be hilarious if I'm actually getting them right, because I'm literally blind guessing on these Intel releases. So it'll be funny how accurate or how close to being on the mark I am. All right, so then we had everybody's favorite Intel CPU launch. The amazing, wonderful, energy efficient Rocket Lake 11th gen, featuring AVX 512 capability on consumer desktop. That was its one trick pony, and this thing was, I think it was like March of 2021 or somewhere around there. Maybe it was April. It was either March or April for the 11th gen Rocket Lake. The year was 2021. You know how many Micro Center salespeople get this wrong when I quiz them? The fact that so many Micro Center salespeople think that I would never quiz Best Buy people, because I don't expect Best Buy people to know this. But like whenever I quiz a Micro Center PC DIY sales guy, like, what's older, Zen 3 or Rocket Lake? They always get it wrong. They always get it wrong. There hasn't been a single Micro Center sales guy that I've quizzed that actually knows that Zen 3 is older than Rocket Lake. It's hilarious. Because Zen 3 is 2020 and Rocket Lake is 2021. All right, anyway. So, all right, then we had 12th gen, which was, I want to say it was like November of 21. Somewhere around there. So we had Alder Lake. There it is. Alder Lake. Because Intel did a double launch. Usually, okay, let me fill you guys in. If you want to know how to tell if Intel is in panic mode, this is how you can tell when Intel is in panic mode. Whenever Intel launches 2 generations of products in the same year, they're in panic mode. That's how you know. And the only companies that can do panic mode are companies that have lots of money. You have to have lots of money. You can't just shift your roadmap up by like 6 months because you can. Like, you can't do that typically. You have to have a lot of money to do something like that. To do a panic mode thing, right? Like, that's how you can tell when there's a panic mode. Because for every bad product, like Kaby Lake, there's a good product, Coffee Lake. And for every bad product, there's Rocket Lake, there's a good product, that's Alder Lake. So in the same year. Thought they were in generous mode. No, because, okay, look, check this out. You know when Intel's not in panic mode? When you get like nothing, when there's no response from them. 2019, there was like literally nothing. The i9 9900K came out in the fall of 2018. And this was basically Intel saying like, don't worry about AMD's 8-core, like the 2700K, or the 2700X, 2700K, 2700X, or the 1800X. Don't worry about that, because we've got an 8-core now. We have a 9900K. That doesn't require you to spend $1,000 anymore, because you had to do that if you wanted an 8-core on Intel as far back as like 14? Haswell E was 2014, summer. That was the first DDR4 platform. So that's how you can tell. So anyway, then Zen 2 came out. Intel wasn't really ready yet. So they let AMD kind of like win that battle with the whole like, oh, the world's first 16-core, the Ryzen 9 3950X. You know, because Intel did the whole i9 thing. They're like, hey, world's first i9 9900K 8-core. But the thing is, AMD did the whole 8-core thing on consumer desktop as far back as 2017. And this was a 2018 thing, so they were like ahead of them. So then AMD's like, okay, well, let's do the whole 9 thing, the 9 branding with this. Oh, but it's a 16-core. You know, that was 2019. So Intel wasn't really prepared. So they did do Coffee Lake. To their credit, not Coffee Lake, Comet Lake. Comet Lake, the 10900K was a 10-core. But again, you know, it's a 10-core. It's not a 16-core or a 12-core. So you didn't really see Intel's problem was they couldn't scale well beyond 8 cores because they didn't plan on that. What they planned to do was introduce the big core, little core, but that wasn't supposed to come out until 2022. But they pulled it up because they're like, okay, we cannot let AMD just run away with all these 16-core, 12-core consumer desktop parts, and we don't really have an answer. Because you guys remember the whole like waste of sand reviews from Gamers Nexus and the like when it came to Rocket Lake? Because like Intel's previous gen, i9 10900K is a 10-core, 20-thread. Then the i9 11900K came out, but it was only an 8-core, 16-thread. So it almost looked like there was some kind of regression happening at Intel because you were getting less cores on the next generation. The only positive was AVX 512 and PCI Gen 4, which their competitor had already introduced the previous year, or actually at this point almost 2 years ago, because AMD went PCI Gen 4 as far back as X570 in 2019. Intel only got PCI Gen 4 with Rocket Lake. So as much as everybody, all the tech press, and everyone likes to hate on Rocket Lake, aka Intel's 11th gen. 11th gen was truly Intel's attempt to reach feature parity with AMD, because AMD had been on PCI Gen 4 or offering PCI Gen 4 since Zen 2, and Intel couldn't get the same equivalent until Rocket Lake. Now, the nice thing was you could pull out a 10th gen CPU, pop in a 11th gen, and if you were on like a Z590, which was typically made to go with 11th gen, you could get Gen 4. So I actually thought Rocket Lake was okay. The press really was, in my mind, a little bit unfair to Rocket Lake because it introduced AVX 512 on consumer. You didn't have to pay for a Xeon or something to get that. And it brought them into parity with AMD with Gen 4 capability. And, it was still relatively competitive with AMD. Yes, it used more electricity, but it was mostly almost the same. It was a little bit slower than AMD in single thread, and obviously it's going to lose flat out in multi-thread because AMD can scale up to 16 cores on consumer desktop. So that was a huge problem for Intel, and they weren't able to attack the multi-thread quote-unquote issue until Alder Lake. And that's why they had to move Alder Lake up and get it out the door. And it was like, that's kind of weird because it's like, oh, you just introduced Z590 earlier in the year, and it's like, oh, now all of a sudden a whole nother socket comes out, while also introducing DDR5. Okay, let me see what the comments are saying. There's a lot of comments about this as I've been talking. Intel doesn't even know all their names. It's Raptor Lake, Meteor Lake, Arrow Lake, Lunar Lake. Okay, so Arrow Lake. Oh, okay, Arrow Lake, not Lunar Lake. Okay. Seriously, what could Intel do to regain the platform crown? Not just CPU problems, but overall platform superiority. So the thing is, you don't need to worry about Intel because Intel still volume floods the market, and they're still technically the market leader just because they have more market share than AMD, and they still have way more revenue than AMD. So I would not worry about Intel. Like, even though they are kind of struggling right now, especially because I feel like the company as a whole is sort of trying to rediscover what it is that they should be doing, because they're fighting. The thing is, people always like to look at AMD as the little guy that's having to fight a war on two fronts. They're fighting against Nvidia in the trenches on the GPU side, and they're fighting against Intel in the trenches on the CPU side. So at the same time, though, Intel is also fighting a war on multiple fronts. It's just not that obvious to the typical tech enthusiast. They're fighting a war against AMD in CPU. They literally entered the war of the GPUs against Nvidia and AMD for some reason. They wanted to do that with the ARC GPUs. And I mean, it makes sense for them to get GPUs for themselves, especially with all this AI stuff now. So I think that at the end of the day, that will pay off in the long run, but it's going to be a long road for them to see the payoff, the ROI on that. Now, they're also fighting a war against ARM and Apple, because Apple basically divorced themselves from Intel for their laptops and their Mac stuff with all this M1 custom silicon. So Intel's losing revenue from Apple. So that's not good for them. And then they're also now struggling with ARM, right? Like, ARM is trying to creep its way in, and I think that's the long game. But Intel does not want this to become a race to the bottom, because if they start competing with ARM for like these really low margin parts and stuff, that's not good. Like, they're okay competing with AMD, because with AMD and Intel, it's kind of a duopoly that has existed for eons in terms of the computer hardware industry. So they're okay competing with AMD, as long as Intel's like larger than AMD. It's like, okay, AMD can exist. It's like, whatever. They already went to court a couple of times because of like anti-competitive things against AMD. But like, the long game is fighting against ARM and these other things, and now they want to go into GPUs, but Nvidia's really strong, and Intel's been doing a lot of these weird marketing stunts that have not really worked, or they've said, or high-level executives like Pat Gelsinger is making statements on Twitter, and then people are calling him out for just like BS comments about Nvidia. So, stuff like this doesn't really help them, but I don't think it's really damaging to them. Okay, and losing value proposition with DDR5 lowering in cost. That's because they pulled an Ice Lake on 14 nanometer instead of 10 nanometer, like it was. Okay, well, the other thing too is like the value. Just to address the comment about the value proposition it's like, yeah, it's nice that Intel does have DDR4. I think that was actually an excellent choice. That was an excellent key engineering decision that Intel made to support DDR4 on their newer architecture. Having said that, if someone was building brand new today, they're pretty much going to go DDR5. There isn't really a reason to go DDR4. And the fact that AMD has continued to breathe life into Zen 3, which is their only DDR4 platform at this point, that has been a thorn in Intel's side because it's like, okay, any random person with a Zen 1 motherboard can just upgrade the BIOS and then go buy a 5800X 3D. It's like, okay, now I don't need to buy a motherboard. I don't need to buy DDR5. So it's like that has been attacking Intel's value proposition for like supporting DDR4 on their 12th, 13, and now 14th generation. I can't tell you how many people I know. I know at least like a dozen different people that I've talked to that have all recently, within the last year, have upgraded to a 5800X 3D. And they skipped Zen 4 and they skipped Intel for the exact same reason. Because in their mind, it's like, why should I, like if I want to keep my DDR4 RAM, why should I buy a motherboard, an Intel motherboard, and an Intel CPU when I can literally just buy a 5800X 3D? And the 5800X 3D's gaming performance is going to be the same as like any of the Alder Lake. And in some cases, most of the time, at least for the type of games like Baldur's Gate, the 5800X 3D is going to outperform any of the other CPUs that are not another X3D CPU, like aka 7800X 3D. So Shadow's saying that's because they pulled an Ice Lake on 14 nanometer instead of 10 nanometer like it was supposed to be. Oh, all in the road. Patty G to get his... I don't know. I don't think he's doing anything wrong. Like, a lot of people seem to be giving Pat a hard time. I think he is doing the best he can. With the hand that he was dealt, he is actually doing an okay job. Like, think about it. If you were in Pat Gelsinger's position, what would you actually do? Do you have any idea what the correct decision would be? Like, how are you going to deal with Nvidia when your Arc GPUs aren't even competitive with Nvidia or AMD, let alone even AMD, right? Like, what are you going to do with the CPU side? I mean, there's still a lot of people out there that just straight up buy Intel because that's what they know. They have never purchased an AMD product. Some people still don't even know. A lot of people, the average person, still doesn't even know that AMD exists. You know, like, I watched a brief part of like one of those gaming YouTube channels, the reaction to the Game Awards, and during the Game Awards there was a Steam Deck ad played during the Jeff Keighley Game Awards, and I remember the reaction of some of the people on the some YouTube channel. It was a gaming channel, and they didn't understand the commercial. They were like, "It's kind of weird how this ad is showing the Steam Deck, but it's an ad for AMD." And when I heard that comment, it was so clear to me. It's like, okay, that person doesn't know that AMD's chip is in the Steam Deck. Like that's what I was concluding. Like, they don't even know that AMD's hardware is in the Steam Deck. It's like they were confused by the commercial because they didn't understand, like, why are they showing the Steam Deck when it's an ad for AMD? Like, it's because maybe AMD's inside the Steam Deck? Okay, anyway, but see, that's what I mean. Like, a lot of people just don't even know that AMD exists. So, you know, that's kind of weird. But those are the sort of things that if a large juggernaut like Intel continues to flounder, eventually that's going to start affecting them in a negative way. But with AMD gaining market share, both desktop and laptop mobile, Intel can't afford more slip-ups, especially if AMD has a home run in AI and server. That's an interesting comment. They're not really... I don't know how much market share they're gaining in mobile. I don't think it's as much as tech enthusiasts like to say. AMD really has only made a lot of inroads in server. So in enterprise, EPYC is basically just killing it against Intel right now. That's just kind of because Sapphire Rapids was just kind of a dud, to be honest. And availability was kind of weird earlier this year. But the problem for AMD is AMD right now has a killer product in the server market, but the challenge isn't so much the fact that AMD is smaller than Intel, it's because a lot of the customers that buy servers, they still only trust Intel products. Like the amount of customer education you have to give these companies who buy and upgrade servers when it comes to trying to convert a enterprise customer to switching from Intel Xeon to AMD EPYC, like that is like trying to move mountains sometimes, depending on who you're talking to. Because the reality is a lot of these companies, the key decision makers within the organizations who write the checks to purchase the server, these guys are just going to randomly always request Intel servers. Like they want to know, like, okay, what's the price per socket, core density, memory capacity, etc., whatever, for a Xeon, whatever the latest generation is. Like that's typically what they're going to request. So if you come back with a quote for like a bunch of AMD EPYC SKUs, they're going to be like, can you explain what this stuff is? Like, I don't even know what this is. Like, what is this? Like, all this AMD stuff, can you explain that to me? So you have to spend so much time basically teaching them all this stuff about the equivalent AMD nomenclature, etc., all this stuff. And it's a huge, monumental task. Like, seriously. So it's like, yeah, AMD has the better product, but it's not just about having the better product. And you see this in the consumer market as well. Like the example I gave you, the fact that some YouTuber, like gaming channel, these people didn't even know that AMD's hardware is in the Steam Deck. They like the Steam Deck, but they didn't understand, like, why is the Steam Deck in an AMD commercial? Like, what? The fact that they're drawing a blank and they're confused, that to me proves that it's the same situation that I just gave you, where it's like, okay, they don't understand EPYC, but they understand Xeon. Similarly, in the consumer market, they just don't even understand, like, what AMD does. Like, what is this? Like, what does this company do? Like, who is this? What is this AMD? Like, that's the largest problem for AMD right now, is getting over that lack of perception of their existence, I guess. I don't know how better to say that. Wouldn't increasing popularity in high... Hold on. Let me see. There's a lot of comments. Seriously, I would wonder if Arrow Lake turns out like Meteor Lake, that CPU performance is not good. I don't think it'll have that problem. Because, okay, the reason why Meteor Lake is looked at as kind of not that great is because you have to remember, in a mobile product, what matters is battery life, heat and noise from the laptop. Like, how loud are the fans on the laptop? How quiet is the laptop? You don't want the laptop to be blazing loud and hot. And let's say you're using the laptop in a public space. You don't want to be that guy in the room with a really loud laptop and everyone's going to be looking at you like, what are you doing over there? You know what I'm saying? Like, what? See, so battery life matters. The noise matters on laptops, that kind of stuff. So when you have to limit the amount of heat, noise, and maximize the battery life while also trying to hit, like, the benchmark, be the top on the benchmarks, that is hard for Meteor Lake to do. And that's the reason why Meteor Lake is a little underwhelming compared to AMD's laptop offerings and even Intel's previous generation laptops, like the 13th gen laptops. So When it comes to desktop, though, I don't think that would be a problem because look at how Intel competes with AMD today. Like Gamers Nexus literally did a video recently. That one guy on Reddit or whoever left that comment like owes Steve a whole paycheck or something because they made the claim that Intel's i7 is like super efficient or whatever. And Gamers Nexus literally just destroyed that argument in their video. So, but the point is, Intel can blast power on the desktop to maintain competitiveness with AMD. They can literally solve the problem by throwing energy efficiency to the wind, raise power like it's Chernobyl, and they can stay competitive that way. So, so that's why I don't think it'll be a problem on desktop compared to laptop. It's a problem on laptop because they have to stay within a certain. They're power limited. They have to be power limited on laptop. They don't have to be that power limit on desktop. Let's see. Wait until they find out AMD is in PS5, Xbox One. Yeah, I bet they don't even know that either. Well, they might know, but the Steam Deck they didn't know. Zen 4 Mobile has been a home run, especially since MTL Mobile launched. Yeah. I think AMD's biggest issue is their inability to scale at the same rate as Intel, plus the back-end support costs. However, they may get enough taxpayer funding if they keep succeeding. I agree with what? Except when AMD pulls boneheaded moves like prematurely releasing FSR 3. Meteor Lake CPUs coming to PC desktop. It's gonna be something else. It's gonna be called what is it? Ice Lake? No. Arrow Lake. Take my word for it, they cannot blast power on a chiplet architecture. Well, they can raise power on the part for the cores. You'll see. They'll do it. They'll figure it out. They'll figure it out. All right. I mean, look at how the 13 gen functions. Although it's monolithic, even though some of those cores go fast, the others aren't so much. Okay. Now, anyway, predictions for Intel's, what was it again? I keep forgetting the name. Arrow Lake. Okay, Arrow Lake. So Arrow Lake. Okay. I didn't finish writing down Raptor Lake. 13th was October of 22. 14th was when was that? That was like last month or something, or was it October? I can't remember. I think it was like this. This was either last month or I don't remember 14th gen because it's not even really a real new product. But anyway, that's what it is. So the next one would be. It depends on how you want to predict this, because this is going to be weird, because we essentially have a copy-paste architecture right here. But Intel can use the launch of 14th gen to give them like an extended window of opportunity to take some more time to refine their next desktop processor. So it depends on how you're grading them. If you're grading Intel based off of the fact that the last real thing was 22, then you're going to be waiting for a very long time if you completely ignored the 14th gen. But the correct thing to do is to assume that the 14th generation is, in fact, the 14th generation, regardless of whether it's a copy-paste or if it's a real thing or not. So I'm going to use this one for my predictions. So that means technically it could be like Q4 of next year, or it could be Q3. Just because Intel has done stuff like this. So they're within so close to each other, like, that's within a year. So I'm gonna say, this is gonna be kind of tough. I would say, what is this, Arrow Lake? What is this thing called? Arrow Lake? I guess it's gonna be called Arrow Lake. Arrow Lake is probably going to be tentative. Well, they have Meteor Lake now, so I'm going to go ahead and say Q3 of 24. Probably like September. Or maybe October, but then it'll be Q4. Oh, 14 Gen was October. Okay, so I was off by a month. Oh, now I gotta fix it. Hold on, I gotta fix this. 14th Gen was October 23. So it's literally a year after the other one. So, it could be something dumb like, oh, it's that. They could do that. They could do that. They could use the fact that they copy paste 13 gen to buy them more time between generations. They could do that. Yes, Arrow Lake is what it's going to be called, guys. It's not going to be Meteor Lake. I'm going to go ahead and say... No, I don't want to give an exact month. When it comes to predicting, I like to do quarters. So I'm going to say late Q3 or early Q4 of next year. That is when I predict 15th gen, or whatever they're going to call it, Intel Core Ultra. That is when I expect to see this product. So sometime around September or October of next year would be my guess for the new Intel CPU. So that means AMD's first. AMD's Dark Souls 1, Intel's Skyrim. That's what that looks like to me. Okay, so now we've got, that's done. What's next? RTX 50 series is coming next year. Now, granted, it's coming at the end of next year. Now, we're going to have to look at Nvidia's launches to figure this out. There's been a lot of rumors that Nvidia's RTX 50 is going to come out in 2025. That is partially correct, because it depends on what exactly you mean by 50 series. Are you talking about the RTX 5070? Or are you talking about the 5060? Because I can guarantee you these parts are coming out in 2025. These are not 2024. What is 2024 is stuff like this, 5090. That is next year, not 5060, 5070. So all the rumors talking about, oh, the RTX 50 is coming in 2025, yes, because when did the vast majority of RTX 40 series launch? Was it this year or was it last year? Well, it was this year. So this year is 2023. Add 2 years, 2025. That's when the majority of the RTX 50 series will launch. So next year, there will be a new flagship, though, in the tail end of next year, just like last year. So let's do the Nvidia launches now, going as far back as 20... Let's just do we want to do Pascal? Because Pascal's kind of weird, because that was the time where, that's where Radeon kind of fell off the cliff for a while, and then had to come back. Let's just start with RTX 20 series. So, RTX 20 series. I'm trying to remember when this came out. I know it was in the second half of 2018. RTX 20 series was... I want to say it was September. It might have been August of 2018, but it might have been September of 2018. I'm going to go ahead and say it was... Oh man, I can't remember. It's been so long. I'm going to go ahead and say September 2018 was RTX 20. I might be wrong. It might be August. So someone's going to have to check for me. It's either August or September. Was the RTX 2080 and RTX 2080 Ti. It was 2018. Second half, I think it was September. It might have been August though. So let's see how close I was. Because remember, I'm doing all of this by memory. I'm not looking this up. So it's like if someone wants to correct me, then they can correct me. August? Okay, I was off by 1 month. Okay. Yeah, I didn't feel 100% right on that September, so that's why I was waiting. Okay, so it was August of 2018. It was toward the end of August. So it was close to September. So I was in the ballpark. It was pretty close. Okay, so that was RTX 20. Right at Gamescom? Okay. Yeah, I remember the more you buy, the more you save. The meme, the more you buy, the more you save. And comparing a $1,200 GPU to a $20,000 Quadro to try to use subliminal marketing to get people to get classically conditioned into purchasing $1,200 flagships. that was how he did it. Show them a $20,000 Quadro, so they don't think that $1,200 is a lot of money. That's what started, guys. RTX 20 series. A lot of people like to hate on 4090's pricing. No, man. The 20 series started it all. This is when it got messy. What was it? Like $699. What was the price of the 2080? I think it was $699. I think that was it, right? Like $700 or something. Anyway, like this is what it was. This is what started it. This thing, 24 gigabyte. This was 11, and this was 8. I think Nvidia will focus on reeling in their value proposition. No, Nvidia's not going to do that. Nvidia doesn't need to do that. We've talked about this. Like, no matter what everybody says, Nvidia doesn't need to adjust prices. They don't need to do anything. They literally don't need to do anything. Because they haven't even gotten, like, okay, what they have done is they've actually kind of lowered prices in a way, sort of, kind of, depending on how you look at it. Because, like, okay, this is a 90 class product. But remember, Nvidia did a social experiment in 2020. They did a social experiment. In the past, historically, they market their flagship product as a Titan. But for some reason, the Titan class product never really sold that well compared to a numbered SKU. For some reason, when they name their product something like Titan, people don't seem to care about it for some reason. So what did they do in the year 2020? So in 2020, they launched RTX 30 series. And this would have been September of 2020. Amidst the pandemic, the 30 series descends in a time of uncertainty. And what did they do? They introduced world's first 8K BF GPU. A big, ferocious GPU. RTX 3090. $1499, 24 gigabyte. So what they did was they instead of branding it as the 30 series Titan, because remember, the Titan has 24 gigabytes of VRAM and it's priced at $2,500. They knocked the price down. So, see, here's the thing that people always don't understand. Like, people always seem to think Nvidia always raises prices. Nvidia always raises prices. No, they actually lowered the price of their top-end SKU in 2020. They did a social experiment. They brought all these influencer streamer people to wherever. They had them play this game, 8K, whatever. You know, you remember the whole marketing thing? Oh, it's an 8K GPU, and they got all these famous people. I don't know any of these people, but these random streamers to like come into the studio and, oh, it's an 8K GPU. Oh, it's so good. 3090. They tried to market it. It kind of fell flat. But this one, 10 gigabytes. This is the one. That's the one that everybody paid attention to. Everybody wanted the 3080. No one wanted the 3090. Only a few people wanted 3090. It was really the 3080 was the one that everybody wanted. And if you look at it, they did not raise the price. They were $700 for 2080 when the 2080 launched in 2018. 2 years later, 3080 launches, same exact price. So it was still good value. And this is the reason why the 3080 was the most sought after of the 30 series GPUs. Nvidia is not going to focus on budget market when they have data center. Yeah, exactly. Like, Nvidia doesn't need to do anything. Like, people who think that Nvidia needs to improve their value proposition in the mid-range, they don't know. The answer is they don't need to do that. They don't need to do it because people are still gonna buy their GPUs. Like, okay, an example I can give you guys. Recently, someone I know wanted to upgrade from their 1070 Ti. 1070 Ti. That is an 8 gigabyte Pascal. That is a GPU that came out in I want to say it was like the end of 2017. I think it was like November of 2017. The last Pascal GPU, that was a relatively high-end GPU, the 1070 Ti, launched. I think it was 2017. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 2017. So, 1070 Ti. This individual was asking me what to upgrade to if they have a 1070 Ti. And by the way, they were also going to buy a 5800X3D because they currently had a B450 MSI, some MSI motherboard, whatever it was, Carbon or whatever. It was B450, so you know that means it was from 2018, meant for Zen Plus, because B450 and B470, or X470, were 2018 motherboards. So this guy had a 2018 motherboard with a Ryzen 7 2700 non-X, using the stock Wraith Spire as the cooler. And he wanted to upgrade to a 5800X3D because it was the easiest thing to do. You literally pull out the old CPU, but now he had to get a better cooler because, you know, that little Wraith whatever for the 65 watt 2700, that's not going to cut it. So I told him he ended up getting a Deepcool AK620 air cooler. But the point is, he was like, what GPU do I get? You know, like if I'm on 1070 Ti today, what can I get that will give me a massive upgrade? Oh, and he also upgraded to 1440p. He was going from 1080p to 1440p. So I recommended I told him, like, okay, if you want the best value, 7800 XT. But if you want to find like a really good deal, try to find like a 6950 XT on clearance or something, because you can get those for like 550 at Micro Center. But he wasn't near a Micro Center. So he asked me about the 4070 Ti because think about it. This is somebody who bought a 1070 Ti. And now he wants to get a 4070 Ti. The problem was as soon as he saw the price of the 4070 Ti, there was some sticker shock. Like, why is this thing like $900? Like, that was the question. The first question was, why is a 4070 Ti around $900? That was question number one that he had. Like, so when people are talking about, does Nvidia need to improve their value proposition? In some cases, yes, because there is a perception that, like, why is it so much money now? You know, like, I didn't pay this much money back when I got the 1070 Ti. Like, why am I having to pay like $800 to $900 for the same tier of GPU? Like, so he ended up getting the 7800 XT because it was kind of a no-brainer. You know, like 500. I think he bought the Sapphire Nitro, so he paid like $550-ish, around $540, I think, with a Newegg promo or something, versus spending like almost $900 for a 4070 Ti. It's like, yeah, the 4070 Ti is faster, but for the games that he's gonna play, which are older games like Conan something and, you know, League of Legends and all these other games, but he's gaming at 1440p, and maybe occasionally like PUBG or something, or some of those older like battle royale type games. Like the 7800 XT is like it's the value champion because it's $500 price point, 14. It's great for 1440p, 16 gigs of VRAM. You know, it beats the 4070 Ti in the VRAM alone. It may not be as fast in rasterization nor in ray tracing, but, you know, the ray tracing, you know, that's going to become irrelevant as time goes by and more demanding games that use RT come out. So yeah, it makes more sense to go with that. But I think in general, though, Nvidia doesn't need to do anything because too many people don't know any better and they'll just buy their overpriced 4070 Ti or even the 4070. So anyway, think Nvidia will focus on... Nvidia is not going to focus on the budget. They don't have to. Yeah, that's correct. It seems that the first card that comes out in every gen has to be the best. So one of the reasons why... The other reason why the 3090 was largely ignored was because it launched second. It launched second. So let's remove this world's first BF GPU. And let's remember that when these products launched, they launched in this order. The 3080 was first. The 3090 came second. And Nvidia learned a lesson by doing that. Because by launching the 3080 first, they made this the one that everyone chased after. And the value proposition was very good. So psychologically, if you offer a product at $700, and then a month later you offer another product for $1,500, while that product wasn't really that much faster, although it did have a lot more VRAM, it's going to kind of get overshadowed by your first product launch. And that's exactly what happened to the 3090. Not only that, but remember, scalpers and not being able to buy one of these at launch was a huge problem. Massive problem at launch. Probably one of the worst launches was the 30 series because it was instantly scalped. And it caused Nvidia to stop selling GPUs on their website. It was so bad. You should recommend 4090. I'm not going to recommend 4090 to someone who can't afford a 4090. Best price to performance ratio. That's not the best price to performance ratio. Nvidia nerfed non-4090 SKUs to push overstock 30 series and focus on H100 Enterprise. Now bait with 40 Super and launch. So happy using 4090 over a year, just that alone already beat Beat those whiners who complained about connector and wait, what? And kept waiting by half the price of the card. Okay, the people who are waiting for the 4090 to become half off, they're going to be waiting until after the 50 series is out. And the 4090 is never going to go to 50% off. Now it could get heavily reduced on a clearance sale. Yes. It could go down to like $1,100 to $1,000. But I don't see, I mean, it could even go to like $900 on clearance. But at that point, it's no longer the fastest card. When that happens. If and when that happens. Which would be sometime in the end of next year. Rumors support replacing all but the lowest tier. Wait, I don't understand. Wait, what? Okay, anyway, we need to finish predicting when this is going to come out. So anyway, what they did with 40 series is they did the reverse. So RTX 40 was October 2022. So actually, now that I think about it, if you notice, there's a distinct pattern with Nvidia's GPU launches. So it seems like they're doing 24 plus, no, they're doing, 24 plus 1. They're doing 25-month release intervals. Or it's like they shift it by like 1 month. They spread it out by like 1 month further out. Because if you look at RTX 20 was like August. 30 series was September. 40 series was October. So does that mean that 50 series will be November of next year? I mean, that could very well be the case. So, but what they did differently is RTX 4090 at $1,599 was first, followed by RTX 4080 at $1,199. Now the problem was they tried to downplay this one by making this one go first. Whereas if you look at the previous generation, they actually downplayed their faster product by releasing their slower product first. But the price differential between the 3080 and the 3090 was literally double the price. So, for not double the performance. So that's the reason why there was a huge problem. So the thing here is the problem with the 30 series was they were relatively close in performance, but large gap in price. This is the problem with the RTX 30 series launch. The 3090 was way more expensive than the 3080, regardless of the situation with supply issues and scalpers. Just on going off of MSRP alone, the 3090 was twice as much money as the 3080 while not offering that much more performance. The only thing it offered was way more VRAM and more power consumption and a little bit better rasterization. I mean, there is a difference. It was faster, but still. So what happened with the 40 series? What was the issue with the 40 series? 40 series had a different kind of problem. So the problem with the 40 series was the complete opposite. They were closer in price, but wider in performance. So, meaning it became harder to consider the 4080 because the 4080 was too closer to the 4090 in price, but it was way further apart in performance. There was a much larger gap between the 4080 and the 4090 compared to the 3080 and the 3090. But now it's like the prices are closer, but the performance is wider. So that's going to hurt your lower end product. Whereas with the 30 series, you had closer performance, wider price. That hurts your more expensive product. So depending on how you look at it, the conclusion is the strategy in terms of the pricing and also the launch window for these harmed the 3090. The 3090 suffered from Nvidia's choice in terms of positioning, like when they launch it, the fact they launch it after the 3080 instead of before the 3080. And also, it wasn't that much faster while costing way more money. So, that was the problem that the 3090 had. So it suffers when your product is, when you have two products that are relatively close in performance, but way spread out in price, that hurts your more expensive product. You get the opposite effect with 40 series. You had two products that are closer in price. Now, they're not really that close, but they're relatively close in price compared to the previous generation. But you have a much wider gap in performance. So that will hurt your lower end product. And that is the reason why, if you guys think about the 30 series in general, the coveted card, the one that everyone sought after, was the 3080. In this generation, the one that everyone sought after between these two cards is the 4090, not the 4080, despite the fact that it's a very expensive graphics card. RTX, wait, what are we saying? Take a peek at Nvidia's earnings report for the last quarter and you will see that their gaming market is literally less than 20% of their revenue. Hold on. By the time, wait, Super Googly is saying by the time crypto rises again, oh, it's coming next year. They'll be crying and begging to buy the 4090. Well, okay, hold on a second. Crypto's not going to... So the 4090 is not at risk when it comes to crypto. People who are going to be mining crypto, they're not going to be using a 4090 for crypto. It's not that there's no profitability in doing that. Your ROI on purchasing a 4090 in hopes of like making back that money that you spent on it via crypto mining is not going to happen. The cards that are going to get gobbled up are going to be your 4060 Ti's, your 4070, maybe 4070 Ti, but that's kind of expensive for a crypto mining card. So I really think it's going to be 4070, 4060 Ti, and then AMD's 7800 XT, 7700 XT is actually the one that I think is going to get gobbled up, because I think gamers who are buying AMD cards, the 7800 XT is overshadowing the 7700 XT, and I would wager that there's not that much difference in mining performance between those two cards. So I really think the entrepreneur who wants to do crypto mining and earn money with like a 6 GPU or 8 GPU mining rig, they're probably going to consider the 7700 XT, because the 7700 XT has 12 gigabytes of VRAM, which you can get by with 8 gigabytes for a lot of different crypto altcoins right now. So you don't really need more than 8 gigs for pretty much every single coin. So, having 12 gigabytes, though, is going to give you a good buffer. So I feel like the two cards that are going to be really, really popular for mining crypto are going to be the 7700 XT from AMD and the RTX 4060 Ti. Just like the 3060 Ti before it. Although I don't know how the bus on the 4060 Ti might hurt it, compared to the AMD card. So I don't know. We'll see. Although it wasn't really, I don't know. I don't really know how it's going to play out. There's too many unknowns when it comes to crypto right now. But all I know is forget about any sort of idea about people buying up 4090s for crypto. No. The only people buying up 4090s for non-gaming is AI. Like the AI stuff, that is going to be... So basically, AI is going to go for all the super high-end GPUs, and the crypto is going to go for all the middle to the lower tier GPUs. But it's going to drive up like the price of everything because you have these external demographics now, aka crypto miners and AI enthusiasts or whatever, or startups or whatever you want to categorize this AI stuff as, all going for the same products. So RTX 5090, late November, December, remaining 50 series, CES, Okay, I'm gonna give you. We need to move along here. I've spent way too much time talking about the timeline. So let's remove this, and I'm gonna put just the dates. RTX 20 was August 18. RTX 30 was September 2020. RTX 40 was October 2022. Therefore, going off of this pattern recognition, I am going to declare that RTX 50 series is coming in November of next year. The RTX 5090. Expect it. November of next year. There. Now I have it on record because this is a live stream. So this is my prediction. What I will say, you know what? Let's not do it that way. Although I'm still gonna say it's probably November. I'm gonna do it the same way I did the CPUs. So I'm gonna say 50 series is gonna be Q4, just to give it a window. But that being said, I still think it's November of next year. I'm just gonna give it a window because I gave these guys a window, right? So we're gonna, whoops. We're gonna leave it like that. Okay, so that takes care of the 50 series. So for those that are hoping to get 5090, prepare yourself for Q4 of next year. Start saving your money. If you're gonna buy like a $2,000 graphics card, you're gonna want to save $2,000 for Q4 next year. Just saying. Okay, RDNA 4. This one, let's not spend too much time. Let's just start with RDNA 2. RDNA 2 was December. Wait, no, actually it was November. The 6800 XT I think was November. I think it was November of 2020. And then we had RDNA 3 was December of 2022. So, oh boy. This one's weird because this one actually does the same thing that Nvidia did. Where it like overlaps by like a month. Because of that, RDNA 4 or whatever the big flagship one is going to be from AMD might actually be early 2025. Because it might bleed over. Like, if they're doing the same thing, like, 24 months plus one, like, it could go into January or Q1. I'm still going to say, like, whatever AMD's next generation, I don't know if it's going to be RDNA 4 or RDNA 5. I'm still going to say Q4. It's on target for Q4 of next year. Why would it be a middle child generation? I mean, it could, but it's like, why? Why does it need to do that? They've had enough time to develop, like, their own RT hardware. So I'm going to say Q4 of next year. All right, let's start, like, cranking these out. PS5 was November of 2020, if I remember correctly. Just like RDNA 3 or RDNA 2. So this one, well, we already know kind of the... There. Alright, so that's most of it. So the only one left is Nintendo. Nintendo Switch is the only one that I don't know. Like, I have no idea, guys. Like, the Nintendo Switch, for those that don't remember, was 2017. I think it was... I want to say it was, like, March or April or somewhere here. I don't remember exactly. I think it was somewhere around March of 2017. I know it was 2017, and I know it was like in the spring or something, so I'm just going to leave it at that. So that being said, this is like 7 years. So I don't know when the Switch is coming out, but I think it should be sometime next year, but I don't know. I haven't been following the rumors. But if you look at, well... This is a much wider gap between the Wii U and the Switch. Because the Wii U was 2012. It was fall 2012. And the Switch was like spring 2017. So that's what, like, less than 5 years. That's like 4.5 years between the Wii U and the Switch. So 4.5 years. Right now, the Switch is already way more than 4.5 years old. You know, it's like it's almost 7 years old at this point. So, it's kind of time for Nintendo to introduce a new console. Feel like they'll prioritize maturing FSR 3 across generations and optimize it for RDNA 3 to take on 50 series load upper mid tier, which supports your hypothesis of a mid-2025 RDNA 4 launch. You mean RDNA 5? I don't know. Like, I haven't really been following it too much. Like, all I'm saying is I expect all the flagships to get updated next year, at the end of next year. I've had this conversation with people at Micro Center from time to time. I'm like, why do all these companies decide to release all of their products, all their flagship products, like all in the same 90-day window? That's super annoying. So I wouldn't mind if AMD moved it to 2025, but I don't really know if they should. Because, well, they could. I mean, I don't know. You kind of have to go by like RDNA 2, because RDNA 1 didn't have a true flagship. And if you look at their product launches, like Vega 64 was, I think it was like August of 2017 or somewhere around there. And then they had Radeon 7 was like February. Well, we'll just forget about Radeon 7. Radeon 7 was like February 2019. But they had RDNA 1 in July of 2019. See, like, if you want to do AMD stuff, it's kind of weird because the product, like, RDNA 1, between RDNA 1 and RDNA 2 was like a year and a half. Just about. And then you had like 2 years between 2 and 3. So now you are essentially going to do like 2 years between 3 and 4. So I feel like they have had enough time. They'll have had enough time to put out a proper next generation product, because they would have had like at least a 24-month cycle. See, this is how, in general, this is how you can predict with relatively good accuracy on when a new product's coming out, without having to look at any leaks, without having to watch any kind of like Moore's Law is dead kind of videos, because you just look at the time, look at when the last stuff launched, and look at the stuff that launched before that. You know, like look at when 20 series came out, look at when 30 series came out. What's the distance between those two in length of time? Then you do 30 to 40 series. You repeat that with all the other things, whatever you want. And this logic applies to any sort of product, regardless whether we're talking about some sort of electronics product or whatever it is. So, anyway, guys, I think that's going to be it for this stream. The stream, we did like 3 hours talking about a lot of things. AMD may want a staggered launch. It is a staggered launch. I don't know what you mean by it's not a staggered. Now, they didn't stagger the Ryzen and the RDNA 2, though. If you look, Zen 2 and RDNA 1 launched together. They literally launched on the exact same day. 5700 XT and the 3000 series Ryzen, except for the 3950X, because that came out later. All that stuff launched on July 7th of 2019. Likewise, Zen 3 and RDNA 2 again launched together. Oh, and by the way, so did the consoles. So did the Xbox. Xbox also launched with PS5 and RDNA 2 and Zen 3 all together. One big happy family. All this stuff. Like I said a couple times in previous streams, 2020 was a magical year for AMD. Like, so many good products, all in the same 90-day window. But anyway, guys, that's gonna be it. So hopefully this sheds some insight on how you can predict when future hardware is coming out just by looking at the history, the timeline. Because the timeline has a lot of good info in there. But alright, guys, that's going to be it for the stream. Once again, thank you all for watching. If you're new to the channel, if you like this sort of in-depth content with PC DIY, a focus on computer hardware and technology trends, and sometimes gaming, at least from a benchmarking standpoint, feel free to subscribe to the channel. It does help me out. It does keep motivating me to keep doing these live streams and keep making this content, because this is a very small channel in the grand scheme of things, but I do like this stuff. This is kind of my hobby, is PC DIY. So are you going to join VC after the stream? Yeah, I can probably join for a little bit. For like 30 minutes or so. But that being said, thanks for tuning in, everyone. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Thanks.